Chapter 258. Before the operation, Yunyao had already made the deployment plan. Therefore, everyone had a clear division of labor and carried out the plan in an orderly manner. Yunyao, Feng Min, and Wu Yu attacked the high priest with all their strength, while Hao Meng and Ji Tianqing attacked the Blood Moon Infanta from the front and back. Both parties started fighting in the forest. Instantly, the sky turned dark, and the shadows of swords and sabers covered the sky, crushing countless flowers and trees. Peng peng peng, muffled sounds, as well as ding ding dang dang, sounds of swords clashing against each other, echoed throughout the forest. Streams of raging energy spread out in all directions like transparent ripples, engulfing an area of 100 meters in radius. The forest turned into a mess. Debris flew everywhere, and trees fell one after another. After fighting for a while, the situation stabilized. Although the High Priest and the Blood Moon Infanta were ambushed by everyone and were caught off guard, they were still in a disadvantageous position. At the beginning of the battle, the two of them were indeed in a difficult situation and were in a passive position. However, after a while, the two of them stabilized their footing and no longer panicked. They started to counterattack in an orderly manner. The High Priest was indeed an expert at the peak of the Origin Core stage. Even though he was surrounded by Yunyao, Feng Min, and Wu Yu, he did not fall into a disadvantageous position. He did not use any demonic treasures. He only used his fists and legs and relied on his extremely powerful attacks to fight evenly with the three of them. The three of them were all chief disciples of various sects and were martial arts geniuses that were one in a million. Of course, their strength and techniques were not ordinary. Even so, other than Yunyao who could fight the High Priest head-on, Feng Min and Wu Yu could only tangle with him and did not dare to fight head-on. The three of them kept waving their swords and slashing out sharp sword rays that covered the sky and covered the High Priest's figure. The High Priest advanced and retreated in an orderly manner to avoid the sword rays and counterattacked with his fists and legs. His fists struck out balls of blood-red fist shadows, each of which aimed at the vital points of the three of them and forced them to retreat continuously. The blood-red fist shadows were very powerful and caused the air to vibrate and explode. Every time they hit a big tree in the forest, the tree that was as thick as a bucket would be smashed into pieces. The four silhouettes leaped up like rabbits and swooped down like hawks. They fought back and forth, gradually moving away from the Devil's Cave and into the depths of the forest. On the other side, Hao Meng and Ji Tianqing were engaged in an intense battle with the Blood Moon Infanta. Hao Meng's white robe was already in tatters. He tore it off and threw it away. He was bare-chested and only wore a pair of leather shorts, revealing his bulging muscles. His body was as sturdy as an iron tower, his skin was dark, and his arms were as thick as his waist. At this moment, he was holding a huge crimson sword that was as wide as a bench with both hands. His eyes were glaring angrily as he constantly roared and attacked with the sword. He was simply like a human-shaped Tyrannosaurus. His feet stomped heavily on the ground, emitting a muffled peng-peng sound, and actually caused the ground to tremble. The crimson greatsword, which was nearly 2 meters long and as wide as a bench, was also surrounded by dark red flames. It carried a tyrannical power as it ruthlessly slashed out. Swoosh! Swish! Every time Hao Meng slashed out, the greatsword would burst out with flaming sword radiance, as if it was going to split the Blood Moon Infanta in half. He attacked the Blood Moon Infanta in an extremely tyrannical and ferocious manner. He was like a ferocious giant beast that wanted to crush everything in its path. There were many big trees in the forest, and they were all as thick as a person's waist. When these big trees were slashed by the great sword, they were all cut in half, and the cut area was as black as charcoal. At the same time when Hao Meng was attacking ferociously, Ji Tianqing had also put away the black dragon sword. He used the supreme technique of the sword Heart Dao and constantly controlled the sword radiance to attack. Swish! 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 The golden sword radiance was as fast as flowing light and attacked the Blood Moon Infanta from all directions. Every sword radiance was aimed at her vital points. Ji Tianqing had almost died in the hands of the Blood Moon Infanta several times. He already hated the Blood Moon Infanta to the core. If he had the chance to kill the Blood Moon Infanta, he wouldn't hesitate at all. Unfortunately, the Blood Moon Infanta was too powerful. She wasn't any weaker than Yunyao, and she had already reached the Origin Core realm. Even though Hao Meng was at the 8th level of the Tongxian realm, Ji Tianqing and Hao Meng couldn't do anything to the Blood Moon Infanta in a short period of time. Her hands emitted a blood-red glow, which condensed into 2 blood hands that were as big as wash basins. They contained an extremely violent power and continuously slapped at Ji Tianqing and Hao Meng. Hao Meng's fiery red greatsword and Ji Tianqing's golden sword radiance were always shaken off by the Blood Moon Infanta's hands. They swayed left and right and lost their power. There were a few times when Hao Meng's greatsword and Ji Tianqing's sword radiance slashed her body. However, her entire body was covered by a layer of dense blood-red light, which resembled a blood-red armor. Ji Tianqing and Hao Meng's attacks couldn't even break through the layer of blood-red armor, so how could they injure her? A full 100 breaths of time had passed. The two of them had continuously attacked over 100 times, but they still couldn't do anything to the Blood Moon Infanta, let alone injure her. After the Blood Moon Infanta steadied herself, she couldn't help but let out a gloomy sneer. Ha ha ha. Ji Tianqing and you, big guy. Just based on the two of you, you dared to ambush this princess? Who gave you the guts? If that's all you have, then die obediently. After sneering, the Blood Moon Infanta unleashed her full power and used a powerful killing move. Blood Shadow Transformation. She shouted in a low voice. The blood-red glow that enveloped her body immediately surged and changed continuously. Swoosh! Her figure flashed and turned into a streak of blood-red light. She instantly dodged Hao Meng's greatsword. In the next moment, she appeared behind Ji Tianqing like a ghost. She stretched out her blood-red hand and slapped at Ji Tianqing's back. Ji Tianqing sensed that something was wrong and immediately used the shadowless step to dodge the blood-red hand's attack. However, he was still a little too slow and was hit by the blood-red hand. Bang! With a muffled sound, the edge of the blood-red hand swept at his back. His figure swayed a few times. After dashing 10 meters away, he stopped. Fortunately, he was fast enough and dodged in time. He wasn't injured by the Blood Moon Infanta. However, after being hit by the Blood Moon Infanta's palm, he discovered that the sword vein in his body had changed. Previously, he had been cultivating in seclusion in Tianqing's courtyard to refine the second aperture point of the second sword vein. However, the time was too short and he couldn't complete the refinement. However, at that moment, in order to dodge the blood-red hand's attack, he unleashed all of his potential. The true core strength in his body flowed at an extreme speed. It contained an extremely powerful impact force and fiercely broke open the aperture point. In a short moment, the aperture point was refined by the true core strength and shone with golden light. He actually unleashed all of his potential at the critical moment of life and death and successfully refined an aperture point. His strength had imperceptibly increased by a little. This result surprised him and made him happy. The cultivation of the sword heart is indeed different from ordinary cultivation techniques. It can actually increase one's strength by unleashing all of one's potential at the critical moment of life and death. It's simply amazing. Chapter 259. Ji Tianqing had noticed a problem a long time ago. Ever since he entered the metaphysical realm and practiced the 4th level of the Sword Heart Tao, the progress of his strength had been very slow. He had thought that this was normal. An ordinary metaphysical realm martial artist would need at least a few months or even a year to increase his strength by 1 level. However, after careful consideration, he realized that this was not the main reason. The sword heart Dao was different from ordinary martial arts. It could not be measured by common martial arts. He vaguely felt that his cultivation method was wrong, which was why the progress of his strength was so slow. Previously, he had guessed that the speed of refining acupoints was too slow when he cultivated in seclusion in the secret chamber. If he used his true origin in an actual battle to stimulate his acupoints, he might be able to complete the refinement faster. However, this was only his guess, and he had never had the chance to verify it. Now, when he was fighting with the Blood Moon Commandery Lady, he had unleashed his potential and successfully refined an acupoint. This proved that his previous guess was correct. The fourth level of the Sword Heart Dao could only be cultivated in an actual battle and at a moment of life and death. After confirming this point, Ji Tianqing was gratified and pleasantly surprised. He looked at the Blood Moon Commandery Lady, who was not far away, and his eyes were shining with anticipation. When I cultivated in seclusion in the sect, the environment was too stable. There was no one to fight with me, so there was no chance for me to increase my strength. Now, the Blood Moon Infanta not only wants to kill me, but also has enough strength to threaten my life. To me, this is the best opportunity to hone myself. Thinking of this, he did not hesitate and immediately activated 3 streaks of sword chi to attack the Blood Moon Commandery Lady with the Flying Star Sword Art. Thousand Feather Blade. The 3 streaks of golden sword chi shot toward the Blood Moon Commandery Lady as fast as lightning. They split into 9 streaks of sword chi and attacked her vital parts from different angles and positions. Immediately, the 9 streaks of sword chi shrouded the Blood Moon Commandery Lady with golden sword shadows. The Blood Moon Commandery Lady was fighting with Hao Meng head-on. She waved her bloody hands and slapped at Hao Meng's huge flaming sword. Both of them were 2-meter-tall giants, and their attacking methods were extremely powerful. When they fought, they were like 2 ferocious beasts colliding with each other. The noises they made were simply earth-shattering. Boom boom boom. Amidst the loud noise, the 2 of them collided 3 times in a row, and violent and raging energy exploded out, causing the ground to tremble without end. The 2 of them finally separated from each other. Hao Meng took 8 steps back, and only stopped when he hit against a broken tree. It was obvious that he had suffered serious injuries. His face was ashen, blood was flowing from his nose and mouth, and the veins on his forehead were throbbing violently. The Blood Moon Commandery Princess had gained the upper hand and was about to pursue and kill Hao Meng on the spot. However, right at this moment, a sky full of golden sword shadows descended upon her, attacking her vital points in a frenzy. Swish! Swish! Even though the Blood Moon Infanta was very powerful, very fast, and very strong in defense, she was still able to defeat the Blood Moon Infanta. However, she still hadn't reached the level of invulnerability and invincibility. Her eyes, throat, heart, and forehead were still her vital points. If she was pierced by the sword ray, she could still lose her life. Therefore, she could only use the blood-red protective demonic technique to protect her vitals and brandish her blood-red hands to strike the sword shadows that filled the sky. Pang pang pang. Amidst a series of muffled sounds, many of the golden sword shadows were smashed into pieces. However, the speed of the 9 sword rays was too fast. It was impossible for her to block all of them, and it was also impossible for her to dodge them. In a short span of 5 breaths, the 9 sword rays had stabbed her thousands of times. The Blood Moon Commandery Princess had blocked most of the attacks, but she was still stabbed more than 200 times by the sword rays. Even though she was protected by the blood-red protective light, she still couldn't withstand such a powerful attack. She was pushed back 3 steps, and her black robe was also cut into a pile of rags. Several invisible parts of her body had already been injured, and dark purple blood was flowing out of them. Ji Tianqing. You damned little reptile. I will tear you into pieces. The Blood Moon Commandery Princess flew into a rage. She immediately used the blood shadow transformation and turned into a blood-red light, dashing toward Ji Tianqing as fast as lightning. Ji Tianqing stared at the blood-red light without changing his expression, and immediately used his second supreme skill. Wind Thunder Strike. He instantly activated 2 golden sword rays and attacked the Blood Moon Commandery Princess from the left and right. The sword rays mixed with the fierce wind and turned into a golden thunderbolt, striking the blood-red light that the Blood Moon Commandery Princess had turned into. Bang! Amidst a loud muffled sound, the Blood Moon Commandery Princess had just arrived in front of Ji Tianqing when she was hit by the Wind Thunder Strike. The blood-red light collapsed on the spot, and the Blood Moon Commandery Princess figure appeared. She staggered back. Her hair was disheveled, and she cut a sorry figure. Her black robe had also turned into rags, scattering on the grassland ruins. It was only at this moment that Ji Tianqing saw her true appearance clearly. She was wearing a black and ice-cold tight leather armor. Her waist was slender, and her legs were straight and long. Compared to the women of the human race, her body shape and figure were extremely hot. Especially the black leather armor that she was wearing, which clung to her body and clearly outlined her exaggerated curves. However, her exposed skin was light purple, which looked very strange. Especially her face. Although her facial features were regular, her face was light purple, and her eyes were scarlet like blood. There was no beauty in her at all. Ji Tianqing. You're dead. No one can save you. The Blood Moon Commandery Princess always wore a black robe, and she would never reveal her true appearance in front of outsiders. Ji Tianqing had destroyed her black robe and forced her to reveal her true appearance, which had completely infuriated her. She roared furiously and turned into a blood-red light again, rushing toward Ji Tianqing. This time, her speed had reached its limit. It was unbelievably fast. Swoosh! With a flash of blood-red light, she rushed in front of Ji Tianqing. She suddenly revealed her true appearance, and her palms turned into blood-red hands. She slapped toward Ji Tianqing's head. Seeing this, Hao Meng, who was rushing over to save Ji Tianqing, immediately changed his expression and cried out in alarm. Junior Marshal Brother Ji, be careful. He was already too late to save Ji Tianqing. He could only pray for him in his heart, hoping that he could escape this disaster. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing had no time to counterattack. He was already prepared. He burst out with all his potential and desperately used the shadowless step to retreat. However, his speed was so fast that he left after images, but he was still hit on the shoulder by a blood-red hand. Bang! With a muffled sound, Ji Tianqing's body swayed, and he almost fell to the ground. He rushed 10 meters away before he could steady himself. When he turned around, blood was flowing from the corner of his mouth, and his face was even paler. His entire right arm was hanging by his side. It was obviously dislocated by the blood-red hand. However, even though he was injured, he was not angry at all. Instead, a trace of a smile flashed in his eyes. This was because at that moment of life and death, he had opened the third aperture in the sword vein. Chapter 260. The Blood Moon Commandery Princess lowered her head and looked at her right palm. Her eyes were filled with confusion. She couldn't believe that Ji Tianqing had been hit by her bloodthirsty demonic palm. Why was he only lightly injured? She was so angry that she couldn't care less. She rushed toward Ji Tianqing again and launched a fierce attack. Little bastard, give me your life. The Blood Moon Commandery Princess's bloody hands fell from the sky and slapped toward Ji Tianqing's head. But at this moment, a furious roar came from the side. A 3-meter-long flaming sword radiance was slashed toward her. Demoness! Your opponent is me. Apparently, Hao Meng had arrived in time. He slashed his sword with all his strength and intercepted the Blood Moon Commandery Princess. If the Blood Moon Commandery Princess didn't stop, she would be hit by Hao Meng's sword. She had no choice but to stop and give up chasing Ji Tianqing. Instead, she turned to face Hao Meng. Bang! Bang! She waved her bloody hands and slapped the huge flaming sword from the side. The huge sword was shaken off and slashed on the ground. Boom! A 3-meter-long and half-meter-wide gully was cut out of the grassland by the huge sword. Countless scorching hot scorched earth splashed out. Hao Meng roared. He held the huge sword with both hands and slashed toward the Blood Moon Commandery Princess again. The Blood Moon Commandery Princess was entangled by him. She had no choice but to use all her strength to resist his attack. The two of them began to fight back and forth, causing loud banging noises and shaking the ground. The 20-meter radius area was in a mess again. Debris of earth and wood flew everywhere. Ji Tianqing took advantage of this opportunity to use the Flying Star Sword technique again and attacked the Blood Moon Commandery Princess from a distance. Red Dragon Flash. He used all his power and condensed a 2-meter-long golden sword radiance in his palm. The sword radiance emitted a fierce golden flame and turned into the shape of a divine dragon. It dashed toward the Blood Moon Commandery Princess as fast as the aurora. The Blood Moon Commandery Princess was fighting fiercely with Hao Meng. She suddenly sensed the red dragon flash coming toward her. Her expression changed drastically and she hurriedly retreated. But she was still one step too late and couldn't dodge the red dragon flash. With a muffled bang, Scarlet Dragon Flash hit her back and sent her flying 7 to 8 meters away. The Blood Moon Infanta rolled and fell on the grass, leaving behind a purple bloodstain. When she crawled up from the ground, her long hair was already disheveled, her face was savage like a fiend, and her entire body was emanating blood-red killing intent. The leather armor on her back had burst open, revealing a large patch of purple skin and a huge wound that was so deep that her bones could be seen. Dark purple blood gushed out of the wound and dripped down the leather armor to the ground. The grass on the ground was stained with dark purple blood and immediately withered and turned black. The Blood Moon Infanta glared at Ji Tianqing. She was so angry that her whole body was trembling and her face was distorted. Gee! Heavens! All right. How dare you injure me? I will skin you alive, pull out your tendons, and grind your bones to dust. She roared angrily, word by word. She was so angry that she almost lost her mind. Before this, she had never taken Ji Tianqing seriously. She only regarded him as an insignificant and weak worm, an ant that she could crush with a finger. However, this ant had severely injured her and caused her to be in such a miserable state. This was simply a great humiliation and mockery. She only felt that her pride as the Infanta of the Devil Clan and the nobility of the Devil Clan's bloodline had been trampled on. If she didn't tear Ji Tianqing into pieces, how could she wash away the humiliation and dispel the hatred in her heart? Hao Meng was also stunned when he saw the Blood Moon Infanta's injuries. He looked at the Blood Moon Infanta's back and glanced at Ji Tianqing with a strange expression. His heart was filled with astonishment and shock. This brat is only at the second level of the Tongxian stage. How could he injure the witch to this extent? Oh my God! Even I can't defeat the witch, let alone injure her. How did he do it? Hao Meng had always thought that he had a good understanding of Ji Tianqing. But now, he found Ji Tianqing to be a stranger. He couldn't understand him at all. He suddenly understood why Ji Tianqing dared to challenge Bai Wuchen. So this was the reason. No matter how strong Bai Wuchen was, he was still much weaker than the witch. Since Ji Tianqing could injure the witch to this extent, he naturally had the ability to defeat Bai Wuchen. Thinking of this, Hao Meng took a deep look at Ji Tianqing and began to pray for Bai Wuchen. Senior brother Bai, oh senior brother Bai, I only hope that you won't lose too badly when the time comes. It's nothing to be a servant for a year. It'll be fortunate if you don't get injured in the battle. At the same time, the Blood Moon Infanta charged at Ji Tianqing again and launched a frenzied attack. Ji Tianqing was instantly in danger. He could be severely injured by the Blood Hand at any time. He had no choice but to run for his life and execute the shadowless steps to escape the Blood Moon Infanta's ferocious attacks. Hao Meng came back to his senses and hastily rushed over to help Ji Tianqing while attacking the Blood Moon Infanta with all his might. The three of them once again engaged in a fierce battle in the forest. The battle was earth-shattering and rumbling. During this period of time, Ji Tianqing was under the Blood Moon Infanta's relentless attacks. He could only dodge and block with all his might. He was constantly in a life-and-death situation. He could only unleash his potential and unleash his strength to the limit. Unknowingly, the few apertures in his second sword vein had been opened by the surging true origin. Soon, the refinement was completed. The three of them chased and fought in the forest for 15 minutes. Ji Tianqing had actually refined 5 apertures in such a short period of time. When the Blood Moon Infanta's strength gradually weakened and her attacks became slower, the pressure on him was greatly reduced. He finally heaved a sigh of relief. At this moment, he suddenly realized that the 8 apertures in his second sword vein had all been refined. He had actually broken through the second level of the Mystic Comprehending stage and advanced to the third level of the Mystic Comprehending stage in the midst of a battle of life and death. Although Ji Tianqing's body was injured in several places, he was pleasantly surprised and did not feel any pain. At this moment, a deep and vigorous roar suddenly came from the forest not far away. Infanta! Quickly return to the Devil's Cave. This is a scheme to lure the enemy away from the mountain. They are slaughtering our warriors. This was the voice of the High Priest. He spoke in the demon clan's language and his tone was filled with grief, indignation, and fury. The Blood Moon Infanta's expression changed drastically and her eyes flashed with intense hatred. She glared at Ji Tianqing and Hao Meng with resentment and immediately turned around and dashed toward the Devil's Cave. When Ji Tianqing and Hao Meng saw the Blood Moon Infanta fleeing, their expressions changed and they quickly chased after her. Quickly chase after her. We must delay her. We must not let her escape. We must buy some time for the others. Ji Tianqing and Hao Meng ran wildly in the forest and chased after the Blood Moon Infanta at their fastest speed. However, the Blood Moon Infanta turned into a streak of blood light and flashed continuously in the forest. Her speed was unbelievably fast. After a short period of time, when Ji Tianqing and Hao Meng rushed out of the forest and arrived at the entrance of the Devil's Cave, they saw the Blood Moon Infanta and the High Priest rushing into the Devil's Cave. Immediately after, Yunyao, Feng Min, and Wu Yu also rushed to the entrance at lightning speed. Obviously, they were also chasing after the High Priest. Chapter 261. Ji Tianqing, Yunyao, Feng Min, and the others gathered at the grassland outside the entrance of the Demon's Cave. Everyone looked at each other and heaved a sigh of relief when they saw that they were only slightly injured. I wonder if the 4 teams of disciples have completed their mission. This is a great opportunity. Let's join forces to chase after the High Priest and the Demoness. Perhaps we can kill them today. Let's go in and take a look. We can't let them escape. Hao Meng, Feng Min, and Wu Yu discussed for a while. They were all eager to rush into the Demon's Cave to chase after the High Priest and the Demoness. Right at this moment, in the sky above the forest that was 1,000 meters away from them, 2 signal arrows suddenly whistled. Everyone turned their heads to look at the sky. When they saw the 2 signal arrows rising into the sky, they all revealed gratified smiles. That's great. They have completed their mission and evacuated from the Demon's Cave through the other exits. The 4 teams have evacuated from the Demon's Cave and returned to the rendezvous point. Feng Min, Wu Yu, and the other spirits shook as they revealed joyful expressions. Yunyao frowned and thought for a while. She ordered in a deep voice, "Let's not chase after the high priest and the demoness. Let's meet up with the disciples of the various sects and understand the situation in the demon's cave." No one had any objections. They followed her through the forest and rushed to the rendezvous point. After a while, Ji Tianqing and the others arrived at an open space at the foot of the mountain. The disciples of the four sects were waiting in the open space. When they saw Yun Yao and the others, two of them quickly came forward and reported the situation. "Senior Sister Yun Yao, we have completed our mission and successfully evacuated. Fortunately, we did not disappoint. We have killed all the demon clan guards in the demon's cave. Even if there were a few that escaped, they were either severely injured or severely injured." After hearing the news from the two disciples, Ji Tianqing, Hao Meng, and the others were excited and smiled. However, the two disciples continued to report, "Senior Sister Yun Yao, we fought a bloody battle and killed hundreds of demon clan guards. However, we also suffered heavy casualties. Almost everyone suffered heavy injuries. There are also 6 junior brothers and sisters who sacrificed themselves in this battle. We brought their bodies out as well." The expressions of Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and the others changed slightly as they hurriedly looked towards the disciples of the four sections. The 30 or so surviving disciples were all covered in blood and had disheveled hair. Many people's white robes were in tatters, dyed dark red by blood. Every disciple suffered heavy injuries. A few disciples had their arms or legs chopped off. Their injuries were very miserable, and they constantly groaned in pain. On the grass behind the disciples, there were 6 cold corpses lying side by side. They were the disciples who had sacrificed themselves in this operation. Among the 6 dead disciples, 1 was from the Sky Pillar sect, 1 was from the Heart Moon sect, and 2 were from the 6 Unity sect and the Pill Cauldron sect. Seeing this scene, Yun Yao, Ji Tianqing, and the others' hearts became heavy, and the joy in their hearts was diluted. However, the disciples of the 4 sects had annihilated hundreds of demon clan guards in the demon cave at the cost of such heavy casualties. This was definitely an exhilarating victory. It was a real victory. Seeing that everyone was severely injured and urgently needed to find a place to heal, Yun Yao said with a solemn expression, "Junior brothers and sisters, thank you for your help. Everyone is seriously injured, and we can't waste time here. Everyone, hurry back to the foothold on the opposite mountain and treat your injuries as soon as possible. Leave the rest to the 5 of us." The 2 leading disciples cupped their fists and bowed to Yun Yao. Then, following her orders, they quickly left with the 30 or so disciples. Everyone helped each other and carried the 6 corpses of the disciples across the canyon between the 2 mountains. They returned to the opposite mountain. After the disciples left, Yun Yao, Ji Tianqing, and the others hurriedly rushed into the entrance of the demon cave and continued to chase after the high priest and the blood moon infanta. After a few minutes, everyone passed through the pitch-black twisting passageway and entered the demon cave. As soon as they entered the demon cave, they saw a spacious and gloomy cave. Everyone held their swords and cautiously passed through the cave. They looked around with keen eyes and searched for traces of the high priest and the blood moon infanta. The cave was filled with a thick smell of blood. There were many corpses of demon clan guards lying on the ground. Ji Tianqing counted silently. There were more than 80 corpses of demon clan guards in the cave. However, after looking around the cave, they still couldn't find the high priest and the blood moon infanta. Yun Yao frowned and looked at the stone doors around the cave. She said in a deep voice, "There are several stone doors. There are many passageways and secret rooms behind them. We will split into 2 groups and search. Once we find traces of the high priest and the witch, we will immediately send a signal to inform them." Everyone nodded in agreement and split into 2 groups to search. Yun Yao and Feng Min moved together. Ji Tianqing, Hao Meng, and Wu Yu moved together. Everyone opened the stone doors around the cave and entered the passageways and secret rooms behind them. They searched carefully. After 45 minutes, Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and the others carefully searched the passageways and rooms behind the stone doors. Everyone returned to the cave and gathered. They exchanged information with each other. Hao Meng said to everyone, "Junior Marshal Brother Ji and I have already checked the 2 stone doors on the left. We didn't find the high priest and the witch. We killed a few of them." Feng Min followed up and said, "We also checked the right door. We didn't find the high priest and the witch." Yun Yao frowned slightly. She looked at the largest stone door in front of them and said, "Only that stone door hasn't been checked. If I remember correctly, only the high priest and the witch can enter and exit that door. That should be a secret area of the demon cave." After saying this, she led Ji Tianqing and the others to the largest stone door. The stone door was tightly shut. It flickered with a dark red light. There were array patterns and symbols carved on the door frame. It was obvious that there was an array formation protecting it. Yun Yao, Feng Min, and Wu Yu worked together. It only took them 100 breaths to break the array formation on the stone door. After opening the stone door, everyone held their swords tightly and carefully stepped over the stone door. They carefully searched every room and secret room. Soon, 15 minutes passed. Everyone searched 6 rooms and secret rooms in a row. They didn't find the high priest and the witch. Yun Yao led everyone into the last secret room. This secret room was relatively large. It looked like an important place for sacrificial ceremonies. There was a sacrificial altar in the room. There was also a huge blood pool. A demon god statue stood in the middle of the blood pool. It looked extremely ferocious and terrifying under the bloody light. There were stone tables, stools, and cabinets in the secret room. There were also secret compartments for storage in the walls. However, the high priest and the witch were not in this secret room. Chapter 262. Everyone walked to the stone table helplessly and gathered together to discuss countermeasures. Feng Min looked at Yun Yao and asked in a low voice, "Senior Sister Yun Yao, we have searched the entire demon cave but couldn't find the high priestess and the witch. What should we do next?" Wu Yu clenched his fists angrily and cursed, "Damn the high priestess and the witch. They must have escaped long ago. It's a pity that we couldn't kill them." Yun Yao frowned and thought for a moment. Then, she said in a low voice, "Junior Sister Feng Min, Junior Brother Wu Yu, the High Priestess and the Witch must have escaped from other exits. They have demonic secret treasures to protect them. Even if we find them, we can't kill them. Since they have escaped, let's end this operation here." Feng Min and Wu Yu were a little unwilling, but they also knew that Yun Yao's words were reasonable, so they could only give up. Yun Yao looked at them and said seriously, "Junior Sister Feng Min, Junior Brother Wu Yu, you two should leave the demon cave as soon as possible and return to our base to take care of the injured disciples." Feng Min asked doubtfully, "Senior Sister Yun Yao, what about the 3 of you? Don't you want to leave the demon cave with us?" Yun Yao shook her head gently and said in a low voice, "The demon guards have been annihilated. The High Priestess and the Witch have escaped. We still have to completely destroy this demon cave before this operation can be considered complete." Feng Min and Wu Yu nodded in agreement. The two didn't waste any more time. They bid farewell to Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing and left the secret room and the demon cave. Only Yun Yao, Ji Tianqing, and Hao Meng were left in the dark secret room. Yun Yao looked around and said in a low voice, "Junior Brother Hao, Junior Brother Ji, this secret room is the core of the demon cave. Maybe there are some secrets and clues hidden here. Let's look carefully." Ji Tianqing and Hao Meng also understood this point. They immediately began to carefully search every corner and the secret compartments on the walls. About an hour later, the 3 of them searched through the secret room and found a large pile of scattered items. The 3 of them piled these things on the ground in the middle of the secret room and piled them up into a small hill. In the messy hill, there were dozens of books of secret techniques and more than a dozen thick ancient books. There were also some turtle shells engraved with words, as well as fragments of Xian weapons, compasses, and medicinal materials. In addition, Hao Meng also found a few strings of grayish-white chain beads. After careful observation, he discovered that the white bone chains were actually made of human bones. After the search was over, the three of them surrounded the hill and frowned as they observed and identified it. After roughly sizing up the pile of items, the three of them revealed disappointed expressions. These things might be useful to the demon race, but not to the human race. Those dozens of secret manuals and ancient books were all written in the demon clan's language, so the three of them couldn't understand them. But even so, Yunyao would not let go of any clues that might appear. She said in a deep voice, "Let's check these things. Maybe we will find something." Hao Meng nodded. He flipped through the ancient books with her, trying his best to identify the contents of the books. Ji Tianqing casually flipped through a few ancient books. When he saw the densely packed Xian words, he felt dizzy and lost interest in continuing to flip through them. He continued to search the secret room. He walked around the corner and gently tapped on the wall, looking for a secret compartment hidden in the wall. Not long after, he found a secret compartment. He managed to open the secret compartment and found a black book inside. Originally, he did not care about this book. He thought that the book was written in Xian words that he could not understand. But when he casually flipped through 2 pages, he was surprised to find that the words in this book were written in human words. Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment. He was full of doubts as he thought to himself, "This secret room is the most confidential place in the Xian cave. How could a human's ancient book appear here? And it was hidden so well by the high priest?" He hurriedly flipped through the book and quickly glanced at the contents of the book. Suddenly, he saw the 2 words Kenshin in the book. His pupils shrank as he carefully flipped through the book. He saw that the book wrote, Kenshin's name spread throughout the continent, causing the 3 imperial courts to be wary of him. Every race retreated when they heard his name. In the year of Gengchen, in the month of Gengchen, Kenshin stepped into the Tianshan region. In a secret realm in this region, he defeated an emperor realm expert with a single sword strike. His name spread far and wide, causing the people of this region to bow down and worship him. Kenshin stayed in the Tianshan region for 10 days. His whereabouts were unknown, and the reason was unknown. A few years later, news spread from the Tianshan region. A person with great fortune received guidance from Kenshin and achieved great success. Kenshin left behind a heavenly star bead in the ancient realm. It is a shocking treasure that can reach the immortal realm. However, the heavenly star bead has never appeared in the world. It is hard to tell if this news is true or false. Perhaps it is just a rumor. Ji Tianqing carefully flipped through the book and read all the contents related to Kenshin. This book was thin to begin with, and the last few pages had been torn off by someone. He had just seen the news about the heavenly star bead, but there was no more content. He was instantly filled with anxiety and doubt. However, in the last few pages of the book, there was a yellowed page with a painting of a mountain shrouded in fog. Ji Tianqing took a closer look and could only see that the painting was of a mountain and a forest shrouded in thick fog. Other than that, there were no words or markings in the painting, and he could not see any clues. He closed the book and thought to himself, for nearly 100 years, the demon race has also been searching for the heavenly star bead. The contents recorded in this book are related to Kenshin and the heavenly star bead. It seems to contain clues about the heavenly star bead. No wonder there are books of the human race here, and they were even carefully preserved by the high priest. Thinking of this, he secretly glanced at Yunyao and Hao Meng. Seeing that the 2 of them were focused on flipping through the ancient book, he quietly put the black book into his spatial ring. Then, he walked to the stone table as if nothing had happened and helped the 2 of them count the items and look for clues. 2 hours passed quickly. The three of them checked everything, but they didn't find any valuable clues. The only clue that might be useful was the dozens of ancient books. Unfortunately, the three of them could not understand the demon race's language in the ancient books, so they could only bring them back to the Sky Pillar sect and let the sect deal with them. Yunyao opened her interspatial ring and put all the things on the stone table into her interspatial ring. Junior Brother Ji, Junior Brother Hao, I want to bring these things back to the sect and report to Master. We have already searched the demon cave. Now it is time to destroy this evil demon cave. Hao Meng nodded and grinned. Don't worry, senior sister. I have already prepared. I have completed many sect missions in the past few years. The sect master and the elders have rewarded me with a few explosive talismans. I have been keeping them and could not bear to use them. Today, they can finally be put to use. Chapter 263. After saying that, Hao Meng took out 7 crimson talismans from his interspatial ring. Each talisman was 1 foot long and as wide as a palm. They were crimson red and emitted extremely violent primordial chi waves. Ji Tianqing could clearly sense that these talismans were of a very high grade, and the power they contained was extremely terrifying. If the 7 explosive talismans were to explode at the same time, they could even destroy half a mountain. Yunyao looked at the explosive talismans in Hao Meng's hand and nodded. Junior Brother Hao's idea is not bad. Hao Meng smiled and continued, these explosive talismans are black-grade high-grade talismans. Only a talisman master can refine them. As long as one of these talismans is detonated, it can kill anyone below the primordial core realm. It can also destroy the mountain rocks within a radius of dozens of meters. Although this demon cave is deep underground and the walls are all hard rocks, there are many tunnels and tunnels in the cave. However, the demonic cavern is connected in all directions. Countless caverns and tunnels have been excavated. The foundation is not stable. As long as we use these explosive talismans appropriately, we can definitely destroy the demon cave completely. There were many secret rooms and tunnels in the demon cave, and the terrain seemed complicated. In fact, the core of the entire demon cave was the empty cave with a radius of 1,000 meters. There were 6 stone doors around the cave, extending into many tunnels and creating many secret rooms. As long as the core cave was destroyed, the entire demon cave would collapse and be completely destroyed. After making up their minds, Ji Tianqing, Yunyao, and Hao Meng left the secret room and returned to the empty cave. Hao Meng walked around the cave and carefully observed for a while before he found a suitable place to place the explosive talismans. It took him half an hour to place the 7 explosive talismans around the cave. After everything was ready, he quickly walked back to Ji Tianqing and Yunyao and said with a serious expression, eldest senior sister, junior brother Ji, let's leave quickly. I've already adjusted the formation in the explosive talismans. After 15 minutes, the 7 explosive talismans will all explode. When Yunyao and Ji Tianqing heard him, they immediately entered the dark tunnel and ran out of the demon cave. The 3 of them passed through the pitch-black tunnel at an extremely fast speed. In less than a quarter of an hour, they had left the demonic cave. The 3 of them returned to the forest outside the cave and silently observed the entrance of the devil's cave. After about 100 breaths of time, the explosive talisman exploded. Boom! A loud and muffled sound suddenly came from underground. The earth was shaking violently, and the entire mountain was trembling as if there was a super earthquake. The ground shook violently for more than 10 times, cracking open one huge gully after another. Many trees were shaking and swaying, and countless trees were broken, letting out cracking noises. For a moment, the entire mountain was shaking as if it was about to collapse. Dust, mud, and wood fragments were stirred up from the mountain, drifting down from the sky. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao were already prepared. Even though the ground was shaking violently, they did not fall to the ground. After a long time, the earth quaking and mountains shaking slowly slowed down and gradually calmed down. At this moment, the entire mountain peak was distorted and deformed. The peak of the mountain had caved in a few hundred meters deep, and it was shorter than before. After the demonic cave was destroyed, the interior of the mountain peak was hollow, causing the mountain peak to sink and fill up the hollow area. Even though the three of them could not see the situation inside the mountain peak, they could guess that the entire demonic cave must have been destroyed. Phew! We have finally completed our mission. Hao Meng let out a long breath, and a gratified smile appeared on his face. We have completely destroyed the demonic cave and killed so many demon guards. The demons will definitely not come out to stir up trouble in the near future. Ji Tianqing also nodded and said with a smile, yes. The Star Ancient Realm will be peaceful for a while. I only hope that the High Priestess and the Witch will escape from the Star Ancient Realm after this and never come back. Yunyao looked calm and did not say anything. However, everyone knew that with the High Priestess and the Witch's temperament, they would definitely not leave the Star Ancient Realm easily. Perhaps, it wouldn't be long before they made a comeback. After a long time, the dust, wood, and grass that filled the sky finally dissipated, and the night sky became clear again. Yunyao said in a low voice, Junior Brother Hao, Junior Brother Ji, we should go back and report. Hao Meng nodded and was about to leave with her. However, Ji Tianqing hesitated for a moment and did not follow. Yunyao turned to look at him and asked curiously, Junior Brother Ji, why are you not going? Ji Tianqing smiled apologetically and explained, Senior Sister, I still have a very important matter to attend to, so I won't be returning to the sect with you. Yunyao frowned slightly, but did not ask any further. Hao Meng raised his eyebrows and asked curiously, Junior Brother Ji, where are you going? How long will it take for you to return? Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and said solemnly, that matter is very important and troublesome. It might take 10 days to half a month, or even a month. But don't worry, no matter what, I will return to the sect before the Heaven Ranking Tournament next month. Since he did not want to reveal the details, Yunyao and Hao Meng did not pursue the matter. In that case, be careful on your way back. Junior Brother Ji, be careful. The two of them warned Ji Tianqing, then waved goodbye to him, turned around, and left. Ji Tianqing watched Yunyao and Hao Meng's departing figures for a long time before he turned and walked in another direction. After leaving the mountain where the Devil Cave was located, he released Qianyu from the 100 Treasures brocade pouch. Swoosh! Qianyu turned into a ray of icy blue light and appeared in front of him, its body rapidly expanding. In the blink of an eye, its body grew to more than 3 meters, and it became a handsome and majestic ice fox. Especially its 12 furry tails, it looked both mysterious and beautiful. Old Ji, where are you going instead of returning to the sect with Senior Sister? Ji Tianqing reached out and touched its head, his lips curling into a meaningful smile. I just found a clue about the heavenly star bead in the secret chamber of the Devil Cave. I have to investigate it as soon as possible. Currently, he was cultivating the 4th level of the Path of the Sword. The sword spirit in the burial of heaven had said that with his mortal body, he could only reach the 4th level and could not cultivate the 5th level of the Path of the Heart. This meant that he could only stay in the mystic enlightening realm and was destined to never reach the origin core realm. To solve this problem, he could only try his best to find the heavenly star bead and merge it with the Kenshin blood. Although Qianyu did not know what the heavenly star bead was, it knew that it was extremely important to him. It nodded and asked, where are you going to start your investigation? Chapter 264. A long time ago, Xian had told Ji Tianqing about the situation in the ancient realm of stars. She had mentioned Flame Spirit City and introduced it to him in detail. Flame Spirit City was the only city in the ancient realm of stars. This ancient city, which had existed for almost 1,000 years, was located in the central region of the ancient realm. It was only 500 miles away from the stellar peak. Flame Spirit City was not big. It only covered an area of 100 miles, and only a few 100,000 people lived in it. However, these people were all martial artists. Many of them were martial arts experts, and there were even a few experts living in seclusion. Almost half of the people living in the city were the descendants of the natives of the ancient realm. Their ancestors had lived in the ancient realm for generations. Most of them were inextricably linked to the 8 great sections. Many of them were the descendants of the disciples of the 8 great sections. They lived and prospered in Flame Spirit City. That was how the city had developed to its current scale. Although Flame Spirit City was small, it was very prosperous. Hundreds of thousands of martial artists gathered in this city. Naturally, it was also a gathering place for information about the ancient realm of stars. The disciples of the 8 great sects would often go to Flame Spirit City when they went out to train. They would ask for information in the city or by some cultivation resources. Ji Tianqing guessed that the mountain peak painting was a clue about the heavenly star pearl. However, he could not see the secret hidden in the painting. He could only go to Flame Spirit City and find a way to investigate this matter. Qian Yu had never heard of Flame Spirit City. It immediately asked Ji Tianqing curiously. "Let's talk as we go." Ji Tianqing smiled and jumped onto its back. Qian Yu quickly flapped its wings and flew into the sky, heading north at a moderate speed. During the journey, Ji Tianqing introduced the situation in Flame Spirit City to it. After hearing this, Qian Yu was naturally excited and eager. It just wanted to enter the city as soon as possible. In a mountain range 500 miles away from the Demon Cave, on the peak of a towering mountain. Under the pitch-black night sky, 2 tall figures stood on a huge rock at the peak of the mountain, looking in the direction of the Demon Cave. One of them was a 2-meter-tall black-robed elder with bare feet. He was the high priest. The woman beside him, who was wearing black leather armor and was covered in blood, was the Blood Moon Infanta. Their expressions were extremely gloomy and cold. Their eyes contained monstrous anger and killing intent. Damned Sky Pillar Sect. He actually slaughtered so many of our warriors and even destroyed the Devil Cave that we had lived in for so many years. The Blood Moon Infanta growled angrily. Her voice was hoarse and trembling, and it was filled with killing intent. The high priest's voice was cold as he said in a low voice, "It's not just the Sky Pillar Sect. There's also the Heart Moon Sect, the 6 Unity Sect, and the Pill Cauldron Sect. Sooner or later, I will make them pay with their blood, and pay them back tenfold." The Blood Moon Infanta secretly clenched her fists and asked in a low voice, "High Priestess, we left in a hurry. There are still many important things in the Devil's Cave that we didn't have time to take away." Before she could finish, the high priest shook his head and said, "Don't worry about it. The demonic cave has been destroyed. We won't be able to find it even if we go back." The Blood Moon Infanta was unwilling to give up. She frowned and asked, "The Devil's Cave has been destroyed, and only the 2 of us have escaped. We have nowhere to hide. Don't tell me that we have to leave the ancient realm and return to the tribe?" The high priest shook his head again and said in an indifferent tone, "We have suffered such huge losses and fallen into such a sorry state. If we return to the tribe, how will we explain it to Lord Demon King? Then what should we do? Where can we go?" The Blood Moon Infanta looked at him and asked in a low voice. The high priest pondered for a moment and had an idea. He said in a low voice, "I know an excellent place for us to hide. We won't be discovered by the Sky Pillar Sect." Unknowingly, 6 hours had passed. It was early in the morning, and a wisp of white appeared on the horizon. Qian Yu arrived at Spirit Flame City and landed on a vast plain. This plain was at least 100 miles in radius. Looking around, one could only see boundless grass and forests. Qian Yu looked around and asked Ji Tianqing in confusion, "Old Ji, didn't you say that we have arrived? Where is Spirit Flame City?" Ji Tianqing pointed at the grassland under his feet and said with a smile, "This is Spirit Flame City. However, the city is protected by a great formation, so ordinary people can't see it." Qian Yu suddenly understood and said with a smile, "No wonder I felt that the plane was strange. There was a faint aura of a formation." Ji Tianqing walked into the depths of the plane and looked around with keen eyes. When he walked 100 steps away, he saw a black stone tablet that was half the height of a man hidden in a cluster of tall grass. The words, "Spirit Flame City," were written in silver on the tablet. There were also formation patterns and symbols carved on it. He stared at the tablet and observed it for a while before revealing a smile. "Qian Yu, if you want to go to the city with me, you'd better shrink a little." "Okay." Qian Yu nodded in response and quickly shrank. In the blink of an eye, it returned to the size of a kitten and jumped onto Ji Tianqing's shoulder to squat. Ji Tianqing then took out the Atlas badge and placed it on the black tablet, silently injecting his true core into it. The black tablet lit up with a silver light and emitted a strong aura of a formation. The great formation of Spirit Flame City was activated, and the scene before Ji Tianqing changed. There was nothing in front of him at first, as if it was blocked by an invisible barrier. Swoosh! After the great formation was activated, the invisible barrier immediately dissipated, revealing the real scene before his eyes. The vast grassland and forest were all illusions created by the great formation. After the illusion disappeared, an ancient black city appeared before Ji Tianqing out of thin air. This was an ancient square city. The city walls were made of huge black stones and were about 10 meters tall. They emitted a majestic and heavy aura. The huge black stones were extremely hard and had been etched by thousands of years of wind and frost. However, there were still mottled and rough marks left behind. The wide and tall city gates were tightly shut, and the words, "Spirit Flame City," were carved on the lintel. The words were already blurred. Ji Tianqing still stood beside the stone tablet, but a wide black stone path appeared beneath his feet. It led straight ahead and connected to the tall city gates. Qian Yu was still looking up curiously at Spirit Flame City, but Ji Tianqing had already walked toward the city gates. The city gates were empty, and there was not a single person in sight. When Ji Tianqing arrived at the city gates, two middle-aged martial artists in armor walked out from the tower on the city walls. These two men were the guards of the city gates, and they were both at the second level of the mystic enlightening realm. The two of them stood on the city walls and looked down at Ji Tianqing. They asked in a dignified voice, "Those who are not of the ancient star realm are not allowed to enter Spirit Flame City. Show me your identity token." Ji Tianqing knew the rules of Spirit Flame City. Only the disciples of the 8 great sects and the residents of the city were allowed to enter. The disciples of the 8 great sects all had identity tokens. The residents of Spirit Flame City naturally had identity tokens as well. Chapter 265. Ji Tianqing took out the Atlas badge and showed it to the two guards. The two of them asked him a few questions before opening the city gates. The 5-meter-tall black city gate slowly opened with a muffled creak 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 sound. Ji Tianqing stepped through the city gates and entered Spirit Flame City for the first time. As soon as he entered the city, he saw a straight and wide road that led straight to the center of the city. Spirit Flame City followed the layout of human cities 1,000 years ago. The city was squarish and the roads in the city were straight. The roads of different sizes crisscrossed and were easy to identify. Even if it was someone's first time entering the city, as long as they were not too stupid, they would not get lost. Ji Tianqing walked on the main road and looked around curiously. On both sides of the main road were rows upon rows of houses and buildings. Most of them were 2 to 3-story shops that sold elixirs, weapons and equipment, talisman materials, and even demon beasts and spirit beasts, Ji Tianqing strolled around the city for an hour and felt that this ancient city was basically similar to the cities of the mortal world. However, the people living in the city were all martial artists. The trades and professions in the city were also closely related to martial arts. Moreover, on both sides of every main road in Spirit Flame City, there were statues of human powerhouses. Those statues were more than 5 meters tall and the carvings were lifelike. The people carved were also of different shapes and sizes. There were white-haired old men, stalwart middle-aged men, and benevolent old women. Ji Tianqing knew that these ancient statues were of the ancestors of Spirit Flame City and the 8 sections. They were all powerhouses who dominated the region. Apart from that, there were also many large relief sculptures on the walls of some palaces and tall buildings. The people and scenery on the relief sculptures were all very lifelike. They depicted legends and stories of powerhouses slaying demons and devils, traveling through clouds and rain, and bestowing kindness to the people of the world. When Ji Tianqing passed by those relief sculptures, he would stop and look at them for a while. It was early in the morning and the entire Spirit Flame City was still in a deep sleep. The main road was cold and cheerless. Many of the shops on both sides had yet to open. Ji Tianqing walked along the main road into the city. He was also thinking about where he should go to ask for information. News and legends about the heavenly star bead were widely spread in the ancient realm of stars. Many great forces and experts had heard of this legend. Once news of the heavenly star bead appeared, it would definitely attract the attention of various forces and experts. Therefore, he would never reveal anything related to the heavenly star bead. He just wanted to find a place to inquire about the secret of the painting. As the sun slowly rose, the sleeping flame spirit city gradually woke up. The shops on both sides of the street opened their doors one after another. Many martial artists and commoners walked onto the streets. The city gradually became lively. The cries of peddlers and the laughter of martial artists could be heard everywhere. Ji Tianqing was still strolling leisurely in the city, silently observing the situation. Unknowingly, half a day had passed. In the afternoon, after many inquiries, he finally had a plan in his heart and rushed to the Octagon restaurant in the city. The Octagon restaurant was a force that specialized in selling and trading all kinds of information. Its name meant to be observant and alert. If he wanted to inquire about any information in the ancient realm of stars, it was definitely the right choice to go to the Octagon restaurant. Ji Tianqing followed the directions of the passers-by and quickly found the Octagon restaurant at the end of a quiet street. This was an octagonal pagoda that was 20 meters tall. It occupied a large area and had a magnificent aura. The entire pagoda was dark gold in color. Under the reflection of the setting sun, it emitted specks of golden light. The 8 corners of the pagoda were engraved with the statues of 8 spirit beasts. These spirit beasts were all rare and mysterious beasts. Ji Tianqing stood on the street outside the pagoda and looked up for a while. During this time, he saw a few martial artists entering and leaving the Octagon restaurant. Those who went in had a serious or anxious expression, while those who came out had a rosy complexion and were in high spirits. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing smiled and stepped through the door of the Octagon restaurant. After stepping through the door, there was a spacious and bright hall. On the left side of the hall was a tall counter. Behind the counter sat a middle-aged scholar wearing a square scarf hat and a goatee. 2 martial artists who had just entered stood in front of the counter and asked the middle-aged scholar something. The middle-aged scholar looked indifferent. He gently waved the goose feather fan in his hand and slowly explained something. Ji Tianqing walked towards the counter. When he was 5 meters away from the counter, he was stopped by a middle-aged man in black. This middle-aged man was the manager of the Octagon restaurant. With a dignified expression, he said, "Is this your first time in our Octagon restaurant? Don't you know the rules of our Octagon restaurant? When Mr. Yen is talking to a guest, no one is allowed to come near." Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment. He quickly cupped his hands and explained with an apologetic expression, "I'm sorry, it's my first time here. I hope you can forgive me for my rudeness." The middle-aged man nodded and didn't say anything else. He turned around and left. Ji Tianqing waited in the corner of the hall for a moment. After the two martial artists left, he walked to the counter. The middle-aged scholar, Mr. Yen, nodded slightly at him and asked slowly, "Little brother, what information do you want to ask?" Ji Tianqing didn't waste any time. He quickly took out the mountain painting and a few spirit stones from the black book and placed them on the counter. "Mr. Yen, may I ask where this place is depicted in the painting?" Mr. Yen raised his eyebrows and stared at the painting for a moment. He then raised his head and looked at Ji Tianqing carefully. He waved the goose feather fan and said in a serious tone, "Little brother, the place depicted in the painting is a famous dangerous place in the ancient realm, the Hidden Fog Mountain Range. The Hidden Fog Mountain Range is extremely dangerous. There are powerful demonic beasts and ferocious beasts entrenched there. There are also all kinds of snakes, insects, poisonous ants, and unexpected dangers. In addition, this area is shrouded in fog for many years. Even if you look down from the sky, you won't be able to see the situation in the mountain range. The fog is very strange, and it can even block the detection of spiritual sense. Many martial artists have entered the Hidden Fog Mountain Range, but most of them died. If you don't have a detailed map of the Hidden Fog Mountain Range, you will lose your way in the mountain range and never be able to walk out. Since 100 years ago, the name of this dangerous place has become more and more famous. Now, almost no one dares to enter it. Hidden Fog Mountain Range. Ji Tianqing muttered the name in his heart. He remembered Mr. Yan's words. He frowned and thought for a moment before he asked again, "Mr. Yan, where can I get a map of the Hidden Fog Mountain Range?" Mr. Yen frowned and thought for a moment before he said in a serious tone, "You can go to the market in the eastern part of the city and look for the owner of the Heavenly Eagle Casino. In the entire Spirit Flame City, only he has a map of the Hidden Fog Mountain Range. If even he doesn't have it, then no one else has it." Ji Tianqing nodded and thanked Mr. Yen before he turned to leave. However, Mr. Yen smiled and added, "However, not everyone can meet the owner of the Heavenly Eagle Casino." Chapter 266. Ji Tianqing was taken aback by Mr. Yan's words. Going to the Sky Eagle Casino to settle a matter? Is it a gamble? Mr. Yen smiled faintly, appearing somewhat enigmatic. "It's a gamble, but it's not what you think. It's a wager." Ji Tianqing nodded and asked, "Mr. Yen, what kind of wager is it?" Mr. Yen explained slowly, "The Heavenly Eagle Casino has both the money gambling on the surface and the Beast King Casino in the dark. In the Beast King Casino, there are two invincible ring masters. They are both powerful demons. You have to challenge one of the ring masters and defeat him before you can meet the owner of the Sky Eagle Casino. The owner will also fulfill one of your requests." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and smiled with interest. "Oh? There's such a rule? Mr. Yen, please enlighten me. How are the two ring masters? What are the rules of the challenge?" Mr. Yen continued to explain, "The first ring master is called Violent Bear. He's at LV5 True Energy Realm and is from the Bear Clan. Only martial artists below LV5 True Energy Realm can challenge him. The second ring master is called Aning. He's at LV5 Common Mystic Realm and is from the Wolf Clan. Only martial artists below LV5 Common Mystic Realm can challenge him. The rules of the challenge are simple. Both parties must fight with their bare hands and are not allowed to rely on external forces such as mystic weapons and talismans. Both parties are responsible for their own deaths." Ji Tianqing frowned when he heard this. A solemn look flashed across his eyes. He knew that demons were born with extraordinary combat strength that far surpassed human martial artists of the same level. A LV5 common mystic realm demon expert's combat strength was comparable to a human LV6 or 7 common mystic realm expert. If a human martial artist did not rely on external forces such as mystic weapons and talismans, he would not be a match for the demon. He looked at Mr. Yen and asked with a frown, "If that's the case, isn't the rule set by the owner of the Sky Eagle Casino very difficult? Very few people can complete it?" Mr. Yen nodded with a smile. "Of course. In the past year, at least a dozen people have challenged him, but only one person has completed the challenge and met the owner of the Heavenly Eagle Workshop as he wished." The owner of the Heavenly Eagle Workshop is a mysterious expert. He also controls the market in the eastern part of the city and is one of the 3 overlords of Flame Spirit City. How can an ordinary person meet him? Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood. He cupped his hands at Mr. Yen and said, "Thank you, Mr. Yen, for answering my questions in such detail." Mr. Yen waved his sleeve and collected the spirit stones on the counter. He smiled and said, "You don't have to thank me, little brother. Octagon Inn has always done things for money. We don't cheat anyone. No matter how much you pay, you will be able to obtain the corresponding information. Go ahead. Good luck." Ji Tianqing didn't say anything more. He turned around and walked out of the hall. After leaving the Octagon Inn, he directly rushed to the Eastern Market to look for the Heavenly Eagle Casino. The sun was about to set, and the entire Flame Spirit City was bathed in a golden sunset. The number of pedestrians in the city gradually decreased, and the cries of the peddlers gradually disappeared. However, the Eastern Market was different. It was as quiet and mysterious as ever. There were 2 main streets in the market. Both sides of the streets were lined with rows upon rows of shops. They all sold weapons, equipment, elixirs, talismans, and related materials. This was the world of martial artists. Everything related to martial artists could be found here. Although there were shops in other parts of the city that sold these things, the quality of those things was far inferior to those in the market. The ancient martial art practitioners of Flame Spirit City usually bought things related to cultivation from the market. Of course, the gold and silver treasures of the secular world were useless in the market. They couldn't buy anything good. In the market, only spirit stones and gemstones could be used as currency. Martial artists who didn't have spirit stones or gemstones could only barter for items of equal value. Ji Tianqing walked along the left main street of the market. When he reached the end, he saw the magnificent Heavenly Eagle Casino. Although it was called a casino, it was actually a majestic palace that occupied an area of 1,000 meters. The interior and exterior of the palace were decorated in a grand and luxurious manner. At the entrance of the palace stood a Heavenly Eagle statue that was dozens of meters tall. The Heavenly Eagle statue was lifelike and extraordinary. It made a posture of spreading its wings and flying high in the sky. It was extremely shocking. 2 rows of black armored guards stood on both sides of the entrance. They were all at True Energy Realm 7th level. Their eyes were bright, and their auras were sharp. It was currently evening. There weren't many people in the casino, so it was relatively quiet. The casino's business was at its best after nightfall. It was the liveliest time. Ji Tianqing stepped through the entrance and entered the main hall of the casino. Before he could see the situation in the main hall clearly, a middle-aged man in black clothes walked over and greeted him with a smile. "Brother, if you want to gamble, please take a seat for a while. If you have other matters, feel free to tell me. My surname is Tian, and I'm the manager of the Heavenly Eagle Casino." Ji Tianqing nodded at him and said calmly, "Manager Tian, I came to the Heavenly Eagle Casino to seek an audience with the owner of the Heavenly Eagle Casino." "Oh? Seek an audience with our casino owner?" Manager Tian raised his eyebrows, and the smile on his face became somewhat playful. "If you wish to seek an audience with our casino owner, you must first complete a challenge. Little brother, do you know the rules of this matter?" Ji Tianqing nodded again and said, "Of course, I know. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come here so hastily." It's good that you understand." Manager Tian's smile grew wider. He extended his hand and gestured for him to enter. "Little brother, please follow me." Then, Manager Tian led Ji Tianqing to the corner of the main hall and entered through a black stone door. Behind the stone door was a dark tunnel that extended deep into the ground. Stone lamps lined both sides of the tunnel, and the ground was neat and flat. It was obvious that people came and went often. After a while, Manager Tian led Ji Tianqing to the end of the tunnel and entered a huge and spacious hall. The circular hall with a radius of 300 meters looked a little like an auction house. The hall was surrounded by high terrains, and it was filled with seats. It could accommodate at least 1,000 people. In the middle of the hall was a circular open space with a radius of 100 meters. It was like a flat pit. However, Ji Tianqing knew at a glance that it was the so-called challenge ring, which was also the arena. In a while, he would be challenging the werewolf of the demon clan named Ning in the arena. There would be many people watching the challenge from the seats around the arena and the private rooms on the second floor of the main hall. Manager Tian led Ji Tianqing through a few rows of seats and entered the arena. Ji Tianqing saw that there were two huge black iron doors on the north and south sides of the arena. Through the bars of the iron doors, he could see that there was a secret room inside. Chapter 267. In the dark secret room, only 2 stone lamps were lit with a dim yellow light. There were a few cracks on the stone floor of the secret room, as well as many broken holes and huge claw marks. Ji Tianqing could tell that these were the marks of the demon race or demon beasts. There was no doubt that the demon race and demon beasts who were going to participate in the arena were locked up here before entering the arena. He sat on a stone bench in the corner and muttered with a gloomy expression, "Damn bastard, he actually locked me up here like a demon beast. This should be the Beast King Casino. It seems that demon-beast duels are often held here, attracting many people to watch or gamble." Thinking of this, he raised his head and looked at the black iron door opposite him. He didn't need to guess to know that the shadow wolf he was going to challenge tonight was locked up in the secret room behind the black iron door. Ji Tianqing had read about the demon race in ancient books before. The demon race wasn't a demon beast, but a special race between humans and demons. They looked like humans, but had the characteristics of demons. It was said that the demon race's physical strength and defense were as strong as a demon beast's. Not only were their reactions quick, but they were also very resistant to attacks. If an ordinary martial artist didn't have a profound weapon, they wouldn't be able to injure a demon of the same realm. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and a playful smile appeared on his lips. A 5th-level profound comprehension realm shadow wolf must have great strength and speed. An ordinary profound comprehension realm martial artist wouldn't be able to injure it if they fought bare-handed. Fortunately, I'm different from ordinary martial artists. Without a profound weapon, I can unleash even greater combat strength. The secret room was silent as time passed by. Not long after, there were some noises and the sound of people talking. As time passed, the sound of footsteps and voices became more and more frequent. Obviously, many people were entering the arena and sitting on the spectator stands as they whispered to each other. Ji Tianqing listened attentively for a while and understood the whole story. It turned out that after Deacon Tian locked him in the secret room, he sent people to spread the news that someone was going to challenge the Shadow Wolf tonight. Many martial artists rushed to the Heavenly Eagle gambling house to watch the battle when they heard the news. Some were even prepared to place their bets. As more and more spectators poured into the arena, the noise in the arena became louder and louder. It became very lively. Ji Tianqing silently listened to the sounds coming from all around. He heard several young martial artists gathered together in the stands about 20 meters away from him, discussing something. The Beast King Casino only opens once every 10 days. Today is only the 6th day, and it actually opened again? What's so interesting about those previous fights? Every time, it's just two demon beasts fighting each other. Even Violent Bear and Shadow are not participating. How boring. Yes. Tonight's battle was still more exciting. There's another reckless fellow who wants to challenge Werewolf Shadow. I remember that it's been half a year since anyone dared to challenge Shadow, right? Yes. The last time someone challenged an Ing, I saw it with my own eyes. That fellow seems to be an inner disciple of the true martial sect. His strength is at the 5th level of the Tongxian stage. He was quite confident before he went up the stage. Young Master Lu, what was the result? Did that kid succeed in his challenge? How could he have succeeded? Are you dreaming? That kid's outcome was even more tragic than those previous challengers. He was torn to pieces by Werewolf Shadow on the spot. Hearing this, the young martial artists exclaimed in surprise and excitement. After a while, the young martial artists calmed down and continued their discussion. Young Master Lu, since the previous challenger was a true martial sect disciple and was torn to pieces by Werewolf Shadow, won't the true martial sect pursue the matter? Pursue the matter my ass. The true martial sect's people knew about this and came to collect that kid's corpse. However, they can't do anything to the Heavenly Eagle Casino. That kid initiated the challenge voluntarily. He knew the rules before he went up the stage. He was responsible for his own life and death. The true martial sect is unreasonable. How can they pursue the matter with the Heavenly Eagle Casino? Tisk tsk, since that's the case, I'm afraid tonight's challenger will be miserable. He'll probably die without a complete corpse, right? Yes, Werewolf Shadow hasn't appeared for half a year. He must have gone crazy from holding back and only wants to kill, right? Let me remind you guys first. If you see the challenger being torn to pieces by Werewolf Shadow later, don't make a fuss. Don't be like country bumpkins who haven't seen the world. Several young warriors quickly nodded in agreement, flattering young Master Lu one after another. Ji Tianqing, who was in the secret chamber, heard the young martial artist's words clearly. His face immediately turned gloomy, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. It seems that Werewolf Shadow's combat power and bloodthirstiness have exceeded my expectations. I have to be careful. Although he only understood now how cruel the rules of the Beast King Casino were. However, he didn't regret coming to the Beast King Casino to participate in the gambling fight. When he decided to investigate the hidden fog mountain and clues about the heavenly star bead, he was mentally prepared to deal with all kinds of dangers. To him, tonight's gambling fight was just the first test in finding clues about the heavenly star bead. Finally, 2 hours passed. It was already night time, and it was time to light the lamps. The Heavenly Eagle Casino was at its most lively time. The spectator stands around the arena were already filled with spectators who came to watch the fight. Even the private rooms on the second floor of the hall were basically occupied by some distinguished guests. The thousands of people around the arena were discussing excitedly, looking forward to the start of the fight. At this moment, a tall and sturdy old man in a long black robe walked into the arena with 4 men in tight robes. The old man was tall and strong, and his hair and beard were gray. He exuded a powerful and majestic aura, and his eyes swept across the arena like lightning. The 4 men in mystic comprehending realm stood behind the old man as straight as javelins, exuding a sharp aura. The thousands of people in the spectator stands immediately quietened down, and their eyes were focused on the burly old man. Many people knew this old man. His surname was Lei, and he was the chief steward of the Heavenly Eagle Casino. He was also the right-hand man of the mysterious owner. Seeing that the arena had quietened down, Steward Lei announced loudly, "I'm Lei Qianjun. Thank you all for coming. Tonight, our workshop will bring you another exciting duel. A young man at level 3 Mystic Comprehending Realm would like to meet our owner and challenge Werewolf and Ing." When his voice reverberated throughout the arena, the thousands of people were immediately stirred up and began to discuss. Lei Qianjun continued expressionlessly, "Who is this young man? What extraordinary abilities does he have? Werewolf and Ing hasn't appeared for half a year. How will he perform? Let's wait and see. From now on, you may place your bets." Chapter 268. Lei Qianjun's words stirred the blood of nearly 1,000 people in the arena. Almost as soon as he finished speaking, countless people placed their bets. The dozen or so managers of the Heavenly Eagle Casino were scattered around the spectator stands and were immediately surrounded by the crowd. After half an hour, nearly 80% of the audience had placed their bets. There was no doubt about the result. Almost all of the audience had placed their bets on Werewolf Shadow, betting that he would win. There were a few people who had placed their bets on Ji Tianqing, but the amount of money they had placed was pitifully small. Most of them had placed their bets casually. There were even 2 people who pestered the casino manager, repeatedly claiming that they had placed the wrong bet and wanted to change it to Werewolf Shadow. All in all, nearly 1,000 people in the arena were certain that the outcome of the duel had been decided before it even began. A human youth at level 3 of the Tongxian stage dared to challenge Werewolf Shadow, who was at level 5 of the Tongxian stage. This was no longer a challenge, it was a suicide mission. The previous challenger was a young genius at level 5 of the Tongxian stage, but he had also been torn to pieces by the Shadow Werewolf. The audience in the arena was discussing the outcome of the youth who had challenged Werewolf Shadow tonight. Would he be torn to pieces? Or would he be turned into a pile of minced meat? The audience was filled with anticipation, their eyes fixed on the arena in the middle of the hall. When the half-hour was up, Lei Qianjun announced that the bets would be stopped. The dozen managers left one after another. Then, the 4 men behind Lei Qianjun walked to the north and south sides of the arena and opened the black iron doors. On the south side of the arena, 2 men in black brought Ji Tianqing out of the secret room and stood in the middle of the arena. Countless people in the audience immediately focused their attention on Ji Tianqing. The crowd looked at him condescendingly, revealing mocking and pitiful sneers as they whispered to each other. "TSK TSK, a teenager is about to be torn to pieces by a werewolf. What a pity. Sigh. This kid has reached the Tongxian stage at such a young age. He can be considered a young genius. What a pity that he's about to die. Hee, I placed a bet of 5 spirit stones. That's all I have. That brat must lose, or else I'll go bankrupt. I also bet 2 million taels of silver. That was all of my family's assets that I tried my best to gather. Don't worry, that kid is dead for sure. Werewolf Shadow will definitely win." In the east corner of the stand sat a middle-aged man in a blue robe. This man had a resolute face and a tall and sturdy figure. He was Ling Yunfei's father, the head of the Ling family, Ling Sihai. More than a month ago, he had secretly left the Green Cloud Imperial City and arrived at the Ancient Star Realm. In order to avenge Ling Yunfei, he thought of a way to sneak into Yanling City. He had already stayed in Flame Spirit City for a month, secretly making arrangements and recruiting a few experts. Originally, he had planned to slowly plan in Flame Spirit City and wait for the right opportunity to take revenge on Ji Tianqing. However, he did not expect that he would actually see that familiar figure when he came to the Heavenly Eagle Casino to watch a battle. When he saw Ji Tianqing walk into the arena, he immediately revealed a shocked expression and widened his eyes. "Ji Tianqing? It's him." After being stunned for a moment, he regained his senses and the expression on his face immediately changed to one of ecstasy and excitement. "Why is he here? Ha ha ha. I've searched high and low for him, only to find him by sheer luck. I didn't expect to meet him here. Ling Sihai was filled with excitement as he roared in his heart. His eyes shone brightly. This is great. I was still thinking of how to kill him. I didn't expect him to court death by challenging Werewolf Shadow, a level 5 mystic comprehending stage martial artist. Ha ha ha, Ji Tianqing, you'll be torn to pieces by Werewolf Shadow soon. I'm really looking forward to it. He sat steadily in his seat and watched the battle with a smile. He was waiting to see Ji Tianqing being torn to pieces and dying without a complete corpse. At the same time, the black iron gate on the north side of the arena opened. Two men in tight robes pulled a thick iron chain and dragged Werewolf Shadow into the arena. The moment Werewolf Shadow appeared, everyone's gaze gathered on it. Cheers and shouts erupted from the spectator stands. Many people were cheering for Werewolf Shadow, telling him to win and tear Ji Tianqing to pieces. After all, these people had placed a lot of bets on Werewolf Shadow. While the crowd was cheering, Ji Tianqing also stared at Werewolf Shadow, silently sizing it up. This was the first time he saw a werewolf of the demon clan, so he couldn't help but take a few more glances. Werewolf Shadow was nearly 2 meters tall and walked upright like a human with both feet on the ground. Its legs and hands were very thick and strong, and its black nails were as sharp as daggers. Its legs were shackled with black iron shackles and its neck was tied with a thick black iron chain. As it walked, it made a clanking sound. Shadow's entire body was covered with a layer of dark gray hair, which could cover its important parts without wearing clothes. Below its neck, its body looked very similar to a human's, except that it was covered with hair and was thicker. However, its head was a sharp wolf's head, and it had a wide and long wolf's mouth. Its green eyes flickered with a cold light. So this is the werewolf of the demon clan. Ji Tianqing murmured to himself. Two men in tight robes pulled Werewolf Shadow to the center of the arena. They reached out and untied the iron chain on its neck and legs, allowing it to regain its freedom of movement. It quickly twisted its neck and legs to move its body. Its eyes were fixed on Ji Tianqing, revealing a bloodthirsty light. At this moment, Lei Qianjun announced loudly, "The challenge begins now." After he finished speaking, he quickly left the arena with his 4 bodyguards. In the wide and flat arena, only Werewolf Shadow and Ji Tianqing were left, facing each other from 100 steps away. Both of them stared at each other with cold eyes, secretly accumulating their strength, ready to launch a thunderous attack at any time. Ji Tianqing silently channeled the true yuan in his body, causing it to surge faster. It was like a raging river, containing a surging power. Werewolf Shadow slowly bent down, lowering its head and emitting a powerful and cold aura. Seeing its movement, everyone realized that this was the precursor to an attack. It was finally going to attack. Ji Tianqing secretly clenched his fists and stared at it, ready to counterattack at any time. Whoa! At this moment, Werewolf Shadow let out a sharp howl. Its body was like an arrow, leaving behind a series of gray shadows, rushing towards Ji Tianqing. Its speed was so fast that no one could see its movements clearly. They only felt that it had turned into a gray shadow. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, it had rushed over 100 steps and arrived in front of Ji Tianqing. It stretched out its thick and strong hands, opened its sharp wolf claws, and ruthlessly clawed at Ji Tianqing's head. The werewolf tribe was indeed ferocious. It wanted to tear apart Ji Tianqing's head and kill him on the spot. Ji Tianqing was already prepared. Although he was surprised by the shadow's speed, he did not panic. He immediately used the shadow step, and with a swoosh, his body flashed 3 meters to the side, narrowly avoiding the shadow's wolf claws. The shadow's attack missed, but its movement did not slow down, and its footsteps did not stop. It twisted its body and pounced to the side, once again stretching out its sharp wolf claws and ruthlessly clawing at Ji Tianqing's head. Chapter 269. Seeing that Ji Tianqing was about to be hit by the wolf's claws, even if he didn't die, he would be seriously injured. What a vicious beast! He cursed in his heart, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. At this critical moment, he did not hesitate to activate 2 sword auras and slashed at the werewolf shadow's 2 front claws. Swish swish! 2 golden sword auras appeared out of thin air and instantly pierced the shadow's front claws, causing 2 muffled sounds. Ji Tianqing was not injured at all, but the 2 golden sword auras were sent flying backward and stabbed into the rocky ground. The werewolf shadow was also shaken to the point that its body was trembling, and its feet took a few big steps back before it could stabilize itself. It looked down at its palms and found that there was a bloody hole in each of its palms, and dark red blood was constantly flowing out. This result stunned it for a moment, and then it immediately let out an incomparably angry howl. The spectators around the stands, seeing that the werewolf shadow was injured by Ji Tianqing, were all shocked and exclaimed in disbelief. No one would have thought that the werewolf shadow would be injured at the beginning of the duel, and both sides had only exchanged 2 moves. In many of the previous duels, the werewolf shadow had also suffered light or heavy injuries. However, its opponent would definitely suffer more severe injuries, and even pay the price with their lives. For a moment, many spectators were stunned. After coming back to their senses, everyone shouted loudly, cheering for the werewolf shadow, encouraging it to fight back and tear Ji Tianqing to pieces. Unfortunately, how could the werewolf shadow understand human language? It ignored the reactions of the spectators around it, and its eyes were gloomy and resentful as it stared at Ji Tianqing, and its mouth let out a furious roar. "You damn bastard! How could you injure me? You're dead. I'm going to twist your head off and smash it bit by bit. I'm going to cut your body into 8 pieces and smash it into a pile of meat paste. Only in this way can I dispel the hatred in my heart." Its tone was full of resentment, but unfortunately, it was speaking the werewolf tribe's language, and no one could understand it. The shadow was completely enraged, and a thick gray fog surged out of its body. Apparently it had activated all of its strength. Swish! Its figure flashed, and turned into a gray shadow, and pounced at Ji Tianqing from the side, waving its front claws to attack again. Ji Tianqing immediately used his shadowless steps. His body twisted strangely a few times, and he dodged in Ying's attack and retreated 5 meters back. Swish! The shadow's speed did not decrease, and its figure, and continued to attack Ji Tianqing from the side. Its speed was extremely fast, far surpassing Ji Tianqing's shadowless steps. It was so fast that Ji Tianqing couldn't see its movements clearly. Ji Tianqing's expression suddenly became serious. His eyes were fixed on Ying as he retreated once again. The 2 of them chased each other in the arena, and an intense and exciting battle unfolded. The spectators around the stands could only see the 2 of them turning into 2 blurs, darting left and right, and flashing back and forth. Experts at level 5 of the Tongxian realm could still see the 2's movements and tricks. Martial artists below the Tongxian realm could not even see their faces clearly, and all they could see were blurry blurs. Ji Tianqing narrowly dodged 5 attacks in a row. Finally, when Shadow launched its 6th attack, he failed to dodge its sharp claws. Rip! The sound of clothes being torn rang out. The white robe on Ji Tianqing's chest had a few holes, and a few pieces of cloth fell off. The holes in the white robe revealed the dark golden sun soft armor, and there were a few deep claw marks on its surface. Ji Tianqing was not injured, but his expression changed, and his eyes became serious. What a fast speed! This werewolf's attack is very similar to the demon race's movement technique. It can turn into a blur of gray mist. No wonder it's called the shadow. No, I can't dodge anymore. Even with the protection of the golden sun soft armor, I will be torn apart by the shadow soon. These thoughts flashed through his mind, and his whole body emitted a strong fighting spirit. He had made up his mind to use his true strength and unique skills to fight the werewolf shadow head-on. At the same time, the werewolf shadow turned into a blur of grey mist again, and rushed over as fast as lightning. This time, it did not use its claws to attack Ji Tianqing's head and neck. Instead, it shot out 12 grey mist blades from its palms towards Ji Tianqing. Swish! 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 The 12 grey mist blades were like 12 sharp arrows, shooting towards Ji Tianqing's head, neck, and chest. Ji Tianqing originally thought that it would attack at close range, but he did not expect it to use the human martial artist's attack technique, controlling the sword to attack from a distance. Caught off guard, he almost got hit. Fortunately, he was fast enough and managed to dodge them in time, brushing past the 12 grey mist blades. Ding! 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 The grey mist blades missed and stabbed into the rocky ground, immediately cutting 12 long and narrow gullies in the ground. Despicable and cunning beast, go to hell! Ji Tianqing shouted angrily. He activated 3 golden sword rays, and used his unique skill to attack the shadow. Thousand Feather Blade. The 3 sword auras immediately split into 9, and with the speed of an aurora, they began to attack from all directions and angles, aiming at the vital points of An Ying's body. Swish! 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 The 9 sword rays lit up with dazzling sword rays, creating countless blurs, like a rain of arrows, and shrouding the shadow. The shadow's expression changed drastically, and its green eyes showed great shock. Obviously, it had never seen a Tongxian realm human martial artist use such a powerful attack. At the critical moment, it dodged without hesitation, and waved its claws to block the sword rays. Bam! 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 A series of muffled sounds were transmitted to the spectator stands around the arena. After 5 breaths, the 9 sword rays finally dissipated. Only then did the spectators in the spectator stands see the shadow's appearance clearly. It was still standing in the arena, and had not fallen. But its body was covered with crisscrossing wounds, and dark red blood was gushing out, dyeing its grey fur red. It looked to be in a miserable state, and had completely turned into a bloody wolf. If one looked closely, they would find that its body had been hit by at least 100 sword rays, leaving more than 100 wounds. If it were a normal human martial artist, with such serious injuries, they would have no strength to continue fighting. But the shadow was a demon, and a werewolf, one of the more vicious and cunning demons. It gritted its teeth and endured its injuries, and it actually let out a shrill howl. It charged at Ji Tianqing even more crazily, and launched a counterattack. Ji Tianqing could clearly see that its green eyes were dyed red with a layer of blood, and it was filled with bloodthirst and madness. The demon race's combat ability is indeed strong. It can still fight after being injured like this. Chapter 270. Gale Lightning Strike. Ji Tianqing stared at An Ying who had turned into a blur and was charging at him. He then performed the second move of the Flying Star Sword technique with all his might. 2 golden sword auras that were more than 2 meters long slashed towards the shadow from the left and right. Swish! Swish! In an instant, the 2 sword rays flew 10 meters away and struck the shadow from both sides. They turned into a golden thunderbolt and struck the shadow. Kaboom! The deafening sound was like a thunderclap, reverberating in the spacious hall. The huge golden thunderbolt scattered the grey shadow on the spot and sent it tumbling backward. It fell to the ground 10 meters away, its life or death unknown. The golden thunderbolt struck the rocky ground, creating a half-meter deep and 2-meter wide crater. Gravel and dust mixed together and splashed in all directions. The ground of the arena shook violently as if an earthquake had occurred. The spectators on the spectator stands widened their eyes as if they had seen a ghost. Their faces were filled with disbelief. The thousands of spectators in the hall did not make a single sound. They were all silent. Everyone was dumbfounded. The thousands of spectators on the spectator stand stared at Ji Tianqing in shock. They could not believe what they had just seen. A young man at the third level of the Tongxian stage could execute such a terrifying sword technique? He could actually injure the fifth level of the Tongxian stage werewolf shadow to such an extent that it was unknown whether he was dead or alive? The werewolf shadow's combat ability was comparable to an expert at the sixth or seventh level of the Tongxian stage. How did he do it? This was too unbelievable. While everyone was still in shock, Ji Tianqing had already walked up to werewolf shadow's side and looked down at it condescendingly. The werewolf shadow was covered in blood. There was a huge sword wound on its chest that had broken its sternum and extended all the way to its abdomen. White bone stubble could be seen from the wound, and dark red blood gushed out continuously. What surprised Ji Tianqing was that the werewolf shadow did not die on the spot even though it had suffered such a serious injury. It was in a dazed state and was about to pass out. Its body was twitching unconsciously and its claws were scratching the ground desperately. However, it had completely lost its ability to fight and could not even stand up. Without a doubt, Ji Tianqing had won, and he had won thoroughly. The thousands of spectators in the stands finally came back to their senses. Everyone let out exclamations and shouts, trying their best to vent the shock and disbelief in their hearts. There were even more people who lost their bets, and because of this, lost their entire family fortune. They were so angry that they were about to go crazy. Some people cried out in surprise, some people shouted in disbelief, some people roared in anger, some roared in madness. The entire hall fell into chaos. The deafening sound waves reverberated in the hall, causing everyone's eardrums to hurt. In the east corner of the grandstand, Ling Sihai sat stiffly in his seat, his hands tightly grasping the armrest of the chair, and the blue veins on his forehead bulged. He stared at Ji Tianqing with his eyes wide open, his expression extremely ugly. How is this possible? He's only been in the Sky Pillar sect for a few months. How could he have reached the third level of the Profound Enlightening Realm and even defeated a fifth level Profound Enlightening Realm werewolf? Why? Why did Ji Tianqing, that little bastard, grow so quickly? Ling Sihai's expression was hideous and twisted. His eyes were spewing flames of anger as he cursed in his heart. Just a moment ago, when he saw Ji Tianqing, he was wild with joy, thinking that he would be able to see Ji Tianqing die without a complete corpse. However, the result was completely out of his expectations. Ji Tianqing had actually defeated Werewolf Ning. How could he believe this? How could he not be mad with anger? After a long time, Ling Sihai's hideous expression finally calmed down, and his eyes returned to their cold and gloomy state. He glared at Ji Tianqing with resentment and cursed in his heart, "Little bastard, I didn't expect you to have grown to this extent. However, I've already made preparations. No matter what, you'll definitely die." Instead of staying in the Sky Pillar sect obediently, you walked right into a trap and ran to Flame Spirit City. This is the will of heaven. The day you leave Flame Spirit City will be the day of your death. At the same time, Lei Qianjun quickly walked into the arena with 4 bodyguards. The 4 bodyguards quickly walked to Ji Tianqing's side and carried the unconscious werewolf Ning away. Lei Qianjun raised his hand and motioned for the audience in the stands to quiet down. Everyone. This young man was able to defeat Werewolf Ning. This is really beyond my expectations. This is simply a miracle. I'm also very surprised. After so many years in charge of the Beast King Casino, this is the first time I've met such an outstanding young man. However, since everyone has already placed their bets, then you must accept your loss. If anyone dares to take this opportunity to cause trouble, humph. He did not finish his sentence, but the nearly 1,000 audience members in the arena knew what he meant. In Flame Spirit City, no one dared to cause trouble without reason. Finding trouble with the Heavenly Eagle Casino was no different from seeking death. Many of the audience members had lost so badly that they had lost their family fortune. They all had mournful faces and looked as if they had lost their parents. However, no matter how angry and sorrowful they were, they could only endure it. Tonight's duel had come to an end. More than a dozen managers entered the hall with hundreds of bodyguards. They maintained order around the stands to ensure that the audience left in an orderly manner and that no accidents would occur. Lei Qianjun turned his head to look at Ji Tianqing, who was next to him. He smiled in appreciation and nodded at him. "Young man, you're really amazing. Your duel with Werewolfening just now was an eye-opener for me. Let's go. I'll bring you to see our boss now. If you have any wishes, just say it. The boss will definitely fulfill them." After that, he led Ji Tianqing out of the arena and through a secret passage to see the boss of the Heavenly Eagle Casino. Logically speaking, Ji Tianqing had severely injured Werewolfening to the point of near death. It would take at least half a year for him to recover. Lei Qianjun should be angry or worried. However, he was in an extremely good mood. He could not hide the smile on his face and his attitude towards Ji Tianqing was very amiable. Ji Tianqing guessed the reason. It must be because of his miraculous victory that made thousands of audience members lose everything. The Heavenly Eagle Casino made a huge profit. No one would know how much the Heavenly Eagle Casino had made tonight. However, Ji Tianqing could guess that it must be an astronomical figure. About half an hour later, Lei Qianjun brought him to the depths of the Heavenly Eagle Casino. They entered a magnificent palace. In the brightly lit main hall, there were musical instruments and women singing. The rich aroma of wine and meat wafted in the air. When Ji Tianqing followed Lei Qianjun into the main hall, he saw more than a dozen beautiful young women wearing thin silk dresses dancing in the hall. On the throne at the head of the hall, there was a tall and sturdy man with white hair and beard. He was sitting on the throne with great confidence. Chapter 271. Even though the burly man was enjoying a warm, fragrant embrace and the sound of fine wine and fine food, he looked like he was about to indulge in sensual pleasures. However, Ji Tianqing could tell that this person was not frivolous at all. He had a domineering and fierce aura, and his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. Without a doubt, this person was the mysterious Heavenly Eagle Workshop owner. Seeing Lei Qianjun bring Ji Tianqing into the main hall, the Heavenly Eagle Workshop owner raised his hand slightly. The music in the hall suddenly stopped. The singers and dancers all bowed and left the hall one after another. Even the two beauties who were nestled in the arms of the Heavenly Eagle Workshop's owner said their goodbyes in a soft voice and left together. In the blink of an eye, only the Heavenly Eagle Workshop owner, Lei Qianjun, and Ji Tianqing were left in the main hall. Lei Qianjun walked into the main hall and reported, "Workshop owner, Ji Tianqing is here. This child has already defeated Werewolf Shadow on the spot and severely injured him." The Heavenly Eagle Workshop owner held a wine cup and slowly tasted it. A playful smile appeared on his face as he sized up Ji Tianqing with eagle-like eyes. After a moment, he nodded and said with a smile, "Not bad. I haven't seen such an interesting junior in many years. You're only in your teens, but you defeated Werewolf Shadow with your mere strength at the 3rd level of the Mystic Enlightening Realm. Little fellow, if I'm not wrong, you should be an elite genius of the Sky Pillar sect, right?" Ji Tianqing was wearing the white robes of the Sky Pillar sect's inner sect disciples. With the Heavenly Eagle Workshop owner's experience, he could naturally recognize him at a glance. He could not see through the Heavenly Eagle Workshop owner's intentions, so he did not answer the question. He only cupped his hands respectfully and said, "Junior Ji Tianqing greets the Heavenly Eagle Workshop owner." What kind of person was the Heavenly Eagle Workshop owner? Naturally, he could see through Ji Tianqing's intentions. He only smiled and did not delve into the matter. He held the wine cup again and carefully tasted it. He asked slowly, "Little fellow, since you've completed the challenge according to the rules, tell me your wish. As long as it's within my power, I can fulfill your wishes." Ji Tianqing did not beat around the bush. He cupped his hands and said, "Owner, I need a detailed map of the hidden Fog Mountain range." The owner of the Heavenly Eagle workshop immediately frowned. He looked at him indifferently and asked in a deep voice, "Kid, the hidden Fog Mountain range is one of the most dangerous places in the ancient realm. Why do you want a map of that place? You are a young genius. Do not enter such a dangerous place and lose your life for nothing." In fact, he didn't care what Ji Tianqing wanted to do, whether he wanted to enter the hidden Fog Mountain range, or whether he could come out alive. He only said that to persuade Ji Tianqing to change his wish. After all, there was only one detailed map of the hidden Fog Mountain range in the entire Flame Spirit City, and it was in his hands. This map was incomparably precious. It could be said to be a priceless treasure. He was weighing the pros and cons in his heart, deciding whether or not to hand over the map. Ji Tianqing bowed to him and said calmly, "Thank you for your reminder, owner. However, I do need that map. I hope you can fulfill my wish." Seeing that Ji Tianqing was neither servile nor overbearing and was determined to ask for the map, the owner of the Heavenly Eagle workshop frowned and looked at Lei Qianjun. "Director Lei, how much did we earn tonight?" Lei Qianjun glanced at Ji Tianqing. He hesitated for a moment and did not speak. With Ji Tianqing, an outsider, present, it was inconvenient for him to reveal the exact amount. However, the owner of the Heavenly Eagle workshop had no intention of avoiding Ji Tianqing. Lei Qianjun could only answer truthfully, "Owner, nearly 1,000 gamblers lost everything. Just now, the manager reported that we earned more than 3,000 spirit stones and more than 500 million taels of silver. There were also some profound weapons, elixirs, and other bets." Although Ji Tianqing was mentally prepared, he could not help but be secretly shocked when he heard the amount. He knew very well that top sects like the Sky Pillar sect and the Tianjian sect only had a little more than 1,000 spirit stones in reserve. Tonight, he had defeated Werewolf Shadow and earned the Heavenly Eagle Casino more than 3,000 spirit stones. This was definitely a shocking amount of wealth. In addition to the spirit stones, there were also 500 million taels of silver, profound weapons, and elixirs. This was also a huge amount of wealth. Of course, the Heavenly Eagle Casino was a large enterprise. This wealth would soon be spent, so it would be difficult to preserve it all. Even so, Ji Tianqing could feel the powerful foundation of the Heavenly Eagle Casino. When the owner of the Heavenly Eagle workshop heard Lei Qianjuan's report, a trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. Clearly, he had not expected such a big surprise tonight. Ji Tianqing had brought him such a huge amount of wealth. His expression softened. When he looked at Ji Tianqing again, his eyes were much more amiable. After pondering for a moment, he nodded and said, "All right. Since I have set the rules, I will fulfill my promise and fulfill your wish." After saying that, he took out an ancient yellowed scroll from his space ring. A gentle green light enveloped the scroll and flew to Ji Tianqing. "Young man, this map of the hidden Fog Mountain range is the only one in the entire Flame Spirit City. It is a priceless treasure. I am giving it to you. You must take good care of it. Also, I hope that you will live well and not die young. After all, a young talent like you will have a great chance of working for me in the future." Ha ha ha. The owner of the Heavenly Eagle workshop was all smiles as he laughed boldly. Ji Tianqing took the scroll solemnly and cupped his hands. "Thank you for fulfilling my wish. I will not disturb you any longer. I will take my leave now." The owner of the Heavenly Eagle workshop nodded slightly and ordered in a deep voice, "Director Lei, see the guest out." Lei Qianjun hurriedly cupped his hands and left the hall with Ji Tianqing. The two of them passed through several palaces and walked through a corridor with carved railings and made of jade. They walked toward the entrance of the casino. Along the way, Lei Qianjun smiled amiably and said to Ji Tianqing in a meaningful tone, "Little brother, with our master's status, there are very few people who can catch his eye. The owner actually praised you to your face just now. This is rare. It seems that he is very interested in you." Ji Tianqing understood what he was hinting at, so he replied with a calm expression, "Thank you for your help, owner. I'm already very grateful that you're willing to give me the map. As for other things, I do not dare to think too much. After all, I am a disciple of the sect and have an important responsibility to fulfill." After hearing his explanation, Lei Qianjun understood that he was rejecting the owner's favor. Lei Qianjun sighed regretfully and said with a smile, "That's right. Young man, with your talent in martial arts, you will definitely be valued in the sect. Your future will be bright." After a while, the two of them arrived at the entrance of the casino. Lei Qianjun cupped his hands and said, "Well, I will see you off here. Young man, take care. We will meet again." Ji Tianqing also cupped his hands and bowed. He said goodbye and walked out of the Heavenly Eagle Casino. After leaving the Heavenly Eagle Casino, he walked toward an inn in the city. Next, he planned to study the map carefully and make sufficient preparations before leaving for the hidden Fog Mountain range. Chapter 272. Under the night sky, Flame Spirit City was quiet and peaceful. After Ji Tianqing left the East City Market, he stayed in an inn in the city. After closing the doors and windows, he sat in front of his desk and took out a map from his space ring, preparing to study it. When he slowly unrolled the scroll and saw the map of the hidden Fog Mountain range, he frowned as surprise flashed across his eyes. He did not expect the terrain of the hidden Fog Mountain range to be so complicated. The map was filled with crisscrossing lines, like a spider's web, outlining the terrain and layout of the hidden Fog Mountain range. Just looking at the map made one feel that it was very complicated and cumbersome. If one really entered the hidden Fog Mountain range, they would not be able to differentiate between north and south and would encounter all kinds of dangers. Ji Tianqing was a little emotional as he thought to himself, no wonder so many martial artists entered the hidden Fog Mountain range and died in the end. The terrain of the hidden Fog Mountain range is extremely complicated. It is like a huge maze shrouded in layers of fog. Without a detailed map, no one would be able to walk out of it alive. Fortunately, the map in his hand not only marked the various dangerous places in the hidden Fog Mountain range in detail, but it also drew a few red lines. Those eye-catching red lines were the routes to enter and exit the hidden Fog Mountain range. Ji Tianqing carefully looked at the map and memorized the various dangerous places marked on the map, as well as the routes to enter and exit. After a full 4 hours, he had memorized the entire map. Only then did he put the scroll into his spatial ring. It was already late at night, and the entire Flame Spirit City had fallen into a deep sleep. Everything was silent. I have memorized the map of the hidden Fog Mountain range. Tomorrow, I will buy some elixirs and charms in the city. Once I am ready, I can set off. Ji Tianqing muttered in a low voice. Then, he sat cross-legged on the bed and began to cultivate. During the battle in the Demon Cave, he was able to naturally temper his acupoints and quickly increase his strength at the critical moment of life and death. This allowed him to find a way to quickly increase his strength and also allowed him to comprehend the essence of the Sword Heart Tao. There was only one word, and that was battle. Only by growing in battle, experiencing the tempering of blood and fire, and the test of life and death would one be able to quickly master the Sword Heart Tao and become an expert in the Sword Tao. It was precisely because he understood this that he had entered the Heavenly Eagle Casino without hesitation and challenged the Shadow Werewolf. In this way, not only would he be able to train himself in battle and raise his strength, but he would also be able to meet the owner of the Heavenly Eagle Workshop after he succeeded in the challenge. It could be said that he was killing two birds with one stone. As it turned out, this was indeed a brave and wise move. Previously, in the duel with the werewolf Shadow, he had unleashed his lifetime's worth of cultivation and naturally refined an aperture point. Unfortunately, werewolf Shadow's strength was on par with his, and the battle ended very quickly. If he had more time and was in a more dangerous situation, he would definitely be able to refine one or two more acupoints. Of course, other than increasing his strength in battle, he still needed to constantly cultivate. Cultivation was like rowing a boat against the current. If you didn't advance, you would fall behind. You couldn't slack off for even a day. Unknowingly, another 8 hours passed. The sky outside the window was already bright. A new day had arrived. Ji Tianqing ended his cultivation, washed up, and left the inn. He went to the market in the East City again and wandered around the various shops, looking for and buying things that were useful to him. He spent a total of 10 spirit stones to buy a few healing and detoxifying pills, a few talismans with special effects, and some miscellaneous items. After he was done with his preparations, he left the market in the East City and walked out of Yanling City. The city gate was still tightly shut and was guarded by a few guards. After Ji Tianqing showed his identity token, the guards opened the city gate and let him out. He walked along the black stone path under the city gate and arrived at the black stone tablet 100 meters away. When he placed the token on the stone tablet and activated the formation, he left Yanling City with a swoosh. The scene in front of him changed, and he returned to the vast and boundless grassland, standing beside the black stone tablet. He released Qianyu from the 100 treasures brocade pouch. Qianyu's body flickered with blue light and immediately became more than 3 meters long. Qianyu, fly northwest. The hidden fog mountain range is about 2,000 miles away. As he spoke, Ji Tianqing jumped onto Qianyu's back and sat down. Qianyu immediately flapped his wings and took to the skies, heading towards the northwest at a leisurely pace. Its speed was not fast and could not be compared to Yunyao's spirit crane. However, Ji Tianqing was not in a hurry. After all, Qianyu's strength would slowly recover, and its flying speed would become faster in the future. He sat on Qianyu's back and faced the strong wind in the sky. His eyes swept across the mountains below and looked toward the northwest. A topographic map of the hidden fog mountain range appeared in his mind. He was silently thinking about how to enter the hidden fog mountain range and how to investigate after entering. Time passed quickly. When the sun had set, Qianyu was only halfway there. It had used up a lot of energy and had to stop to rest. It could only continue flying after recovering its energy. Ji Tianqing let it land in the vast mountain range and stopped at the peak of a mountain that was thousands of feet high. The area within a few hundred miles was a vast mountain range. It was desolate and uninhabited. The mountain range was filled with primitive forests. Towering ancient trees grew on the peaks and a thick layer of fallen leaves piled up on the ground. Ji Tianqing found a flat and open grassland on the peak of the mountain and used a few millstone stones and some formation materials to set up a simple formation. This was only a mystic-level low-grade formation. It could not stop a mystic-level expert. However, it could shelter him from the wind and rain and protect him from the attacks of demonic beasts. He sat cross-legged on the millstone and closed his eyes to rest. He silently cultivated. Qianyu shrank its body to the size of a kitten and went back into the 100 treasures brocade pouch to rest. Tonight, he would rest here for the night and continue his journey the next morning. He had plenty of time anyway. He was not in a hurry. Traveling in the vast mountain range late at night was not only slow, but also very dangerous. He would definitely attract the attacks of many demonic beasts. Resting on the peak of the mountain was the wisest choice. The mountain range was abnormally quiet at night. Occasionally, the roars of demonic beasts could be heard from afar. It added a sense of mystery and danger to the dark night. The sky was also filled with stars. The faint starlight shone down and covered Ji Tianqing's figure. His mind was tranquil, and he quickly entered a focused state of cultivation. However, in the middle of the night, when he was cultivating, he suddenly heard light footsteps coming from the peak of the mountain. He was instantly awakened. He immediately stopped cultivating and opened his eyes. He turned his head and looked around. From the corner of his eye, he saw a cold light flashing in the dark forest 100 meters away. He immediately recognized it. It was the cold light of a mystic weapon. Chapter 273. Ji Tianqing had become extremely vigilant after experiencing countless life and death situations. He immediately sensed that there were several martial artists in the dark forest. They were all armed with sharp blades and were approaching him with unknown intentions. He realized that something was wrong. His figure flashed as he jumped off the millstone and rushed down the mountain without hesitation. In this desolate and uninhabited mountain range, he had to be on guard against any martial practitioners who suddenly appeared with unknown intentions. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing used the shadowless step and left the open space in a few flashes. He rushed into the dense forest. He ran quickly through the forest and rushed to the foot of the mountain. He wanted to leave this troublesome place as soon as possible. Just as he left the open space, the martial artists in the forest let out a few deep roars and chased after him. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. One after another, black figures crossed the open space and the millstone. They were like ghosts in the night, chasing after Ji Tianqing as fast as the wind. Each of the black shadows held a shiny sword in their hands, which shone with a frightening cold light. There were a total of 10 martial artists in this group. They were of different heights, but their auras were all sharp and vigorous. They faintly emitted a murderous aura. More importantly, every martial artist was in the mystic comprehending realm. The speed at which they ran through the forest was even faster than Ji Tianqing. 9 of them were dressed in black. Only the burly leader was dressed in a blue robe. He took the lead and ran with all his might. His eyes were fixed on Ji Tianqing's figure in front of him. His face was very gloomy, and his eyes were filled with excitement and murderous intent. Damn little bastard, I didn't expect you to be so vigilant. However, let's see where you can escape to in this vast mountain range. He roared coldly. His veins bulged as he gripped his sword tightly. He was exerting a lot of strength. After all, he had been waiting for this day for too long. 15 minutes passed quickly. The group chased after Ji Tianqing to the foot of the mountain. At this time, the two parties were still 100 meters apart. Ji Tianqing did not slow down in the slightest. He dashed madly through the forest at the foot of the mountain, and the distance between them grew larger and larger. Seeing this situation, the blue-robed man decisively gave the order. Duan Ming. You and the 3 brothers who are the best in Qinggong will pursue that little bastard with all your might. You must stop him. Among the black-clothed men following behind him, a thin middle-aged man with a cold gaze immediately said, "Yes, sir." After that, the skinny man led the 3 men in black and suddenly sped up towards Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was shuttling through the dense forest, nimbly crossing layers of ditches and obstacles as he ran towards the mountain in front of him. His expression was grave and gloomy, and there was a trace of confusion in his eyes. Damn bastard! There are actually 10 experts chasing after me. Who are these people? Before he could figure it out, the footsteps behind him became more and more hurried. He turned around and glanced behind him. He saw 4 men in black moving through the forest nimbly. They were approaching him quickly like ghosts. The 4 men were extremely fast. In just a short 15 minutes, they had caught up with him. Finally, at the river at the foot of the mountain, the 4 black-clothed men caught up with him and surrounded him. Ji Tianqing could no longer escape. He had to stand by the river bank, take out the black dragon sword from the space ring, and hold it tightly in his hand. He looked coldly at the 4 black-clothed men and asked in a low voice, "Who are you people? Why are you chasing after me?" The 4 black-clothed men spread out and slowly walked around him. The swords in their hands shone with a cold light, and their bodies emitted a cold murderous intent. In the face of Ji Tianqing's questioning, the 4 men were expressionless and did not open their mouths to answer. Ji Tianqing frowned. His eyes looked past the 4 black-clothed men and into the forest not far away. He could guess that the 4 black-clothed men should be assassins. The real leader had not arrived yet. Sure enough, after a short while, the blue-robed man rushed out of the forest with 5 black-clothed men and rushed to the river bank. The 9 black-clothed men surrounded Ji Tianqing. They were all holding dark weapon sharp swords in their hands, and their bodies were full of murderous intent. The blue-robed man walked quickly into the field. He stared at Ji Tianqing with a gloomy eyes and a smug sneer. "Ji Tianqing, you didn't expect this, did you? We meet again." When Ji Tianqing heard this familiar voice, his body suddenly trembled. His eyes became gloomy and complicated. He looked at the blue-robed man in disbelief and asked in a low voice, "Ling Sihai. It's you?" He had never expected to see Ling Sihai in the ancient realm of stars. Moreover, Ling Sihai had brought 9 mystic comprehending experts to chase after him. Obviously, this was premeditated. Ling Sihai grinned and revealed a sinister sneer. He said in a low voice, "Ji Tianqing. You killed my daughter, Yunfei. I must avenge her. If I don't tear you to pieces, I won't be able to vent the hatred in my heart. You think you'll be safe after leaving the Imperial City and entering the Sky Pillar sect? Even if I have to chase you to the ends of the earth, I'll take your dog life. In order to deal with you, I entered Flame Spirit City a month ago and made arrangements. I didn't expect you to seek your own death by entering Flame Spirit City. It's the will of the heavens. Even the heavens are helping me." After hearing Ling Sihai's words, Ji Tianqing finally understood. "I see. Father told me in his letter that Ling Sihai had secretly left the Imperial City of Green Cloud Imperial City. So he secretly sneaked into the ancient realm of stars. Ling Sihai recruited these 9 assassins in Flame Spirit City. From the moment I left Flame Spirit City, they followed me all the way here." After understanding the whole story, he gripped the black dragon sword tightly with both hands. The true energy in his body circulated rapidly, bursting with battle intent and killing intent. "Ling Sihai. Whether you believe it or not, I'll say it one last time. I didn't kill Yunfei." Although this was the truth, how could Ling Sihai believe it? "Ji Tianqing. You little bastard, you're about to die and you still want to deny it? Everyone, go. Tear this little bastard into pieces and burn his bones to ashes." Ling Sihai roared with killing intent and gave the order. The 9 black-clothed men brandished their swords without hesitation, using powerful killing moves to besiege Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing had expected that Ling Sihai wouldn't believe him, so he didn't waste any more words. With a clang, he drew the black dragon sword and counterattacked. Roar! The moment the black dragon sword was unsheathed, it lit up with a dazzling cold light. It slashed out a 5-meter-long sword light that seemed to split heaven and earth. The 2 black-clothed men closest to Ji Tianqing and at the front had no room to dodge and were instantly struck by the black dragon sword. Bang! Chapter 274. Once the black dragon sword was unsheathed, it would taste blood. The dazzling sword radiance and the illusory image of the divine dragon were the strongest attack of the black dragon sword. The 2 men in black were both at LV5 of the Tongxian realm. They were also assassins who walked on the edge of death all year round. Although they were cautious and had rich combat experience, they were still unable to block the strongest attack of the Black Dragon sword. This was probably the proverb, "One strong man can defeat 10 skilled men." A long and narrow wound was left on their chests by the sword light. White bones were exposed, and dark red blood gushed out from the wound. It was fortunate that they did not die on the spot. They could only lie on the ground and twitch, unable to fight anymore. As soon as the two sides exchanged blows, Ji Tianqing made such an earth-shattering strike and severely injured the 2 assassins on the spot. Ling Sihai and the other 7 assassins were shocked, and their eyes were filled with horror. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would not have believed that this was an attack that a LV3 Tongxian realm martial artist could make. While everyone was still in a daze, Ji Tianqing took the lead to attack with his sword. He unleashed all his potential to perform his swordsmanship and made dazzling sword radiance all over the sky. Swish swish swish. 12 cold sword lights spread out in the night sky, scattering like a fan toward the surrounding black-clothed assassins. The assassins immediately came to their senses and did not dare to underestimate Ji Tianqing anymore. They desperately defended and counterattacked. Bang bang bang. The sword radiance and sword radiance collided fiercely in the night sky, bursting out dazzling light and bursting out violent and raging energy chi. Ji Tianqing's attack was blocked, but the other assassins took the opportunity to attack fiercely. Dozens of sword radiance enveloped him. He was suddenly in a life-or-death situation. His will to live burst out and his martial arts potential burst out again. He desperately waved his sword to block and kill. The genuine origin in his body was pushed to the limit, surging through his meridians and fiercely washing and refining his aperture acupoints. In just 10 breaths, the second aperture acupoint of his third sword vein was successfully refined. Of course, Ji Tianqing was completely focused on fighting the black-clothed assassins with all his might, so he didn't notice this. He used shadowless steps to reach his maximum speed, flashing and dodging the sword radiance and sword radiance. Ling Sihai and the 7 black-clothed assassins all launched a fierce attack with murderous intent. Every move and every style was a fatal blow. These 7 black-clothed assassins had obviously fought together often and had already formed a tacit understanding with each other. They had even practiced an exquisite joint attack sword technique. The 7 of them surrounded Ji Tianqing and attacked him fiercely. They advanced and retreated in an orderly manner, attacking and defending as one. Their attacks were like stormy waves, and their power was getting stronger and stronger. Ji Tianqing felt more and more pressure, and the situation became more and more dangerous. He could die on the spot at any time. Both sides fought fiercely by the side of the surging river. Their figures flickered back and forth at a speed that was too fast for the eyes to take in. Ding ding dang dang, the sound of swords colliding was endless, and the violent sword chi and strong wind were constantly spreading in all directions. The ground on the riverbank was covered with sand, which was also stirred up by the wind and sword chi. It was like a heavy rain. As time passed, Ji Tianqing's stamina gradually weakened, and he was beaten to a pulp. He had exchanged hundreds of moves with Ling Sihai and the others. His genuine origin was greatly consumed. He was sweating all over and his face was as pale as paper. Although he had a deep foundation in exquisite sword technique, using the Black Dragon sword to stab several assassins. But those assassins were incomparably experienced and always cleverly avoided their vital points. The assassins were only slightly injured and still retained their fighting strength. Ji Tianqing's injuries were more serious. He had suffered 6 sword wounds. The clothes on his chest and back were torn, revealing hideous wounds that were constantly gushing out dark red blood. Especially the bloody hole on his waist. It was a sneak attack by Ling Sihai when he was resisting the attacks of the assassins. However, in this tragic and dangerous fight, he had completely stimulated his potential and refined 6 aperture acupoints. Now his third sword vein had refined 7 aperture acupoints. He only needed one more to reach LV4 of the Tongxian realm. Ji Tianqing. You are at death's door. Do you still want to resist stubbornly? Ling Sihai held the 3-foot-long sword in his hand and stared at him with resentment. He shouted with a ferocious face, kneel down and accept your death. Pay with your life for my daughter Yunfei. Ji Tianqing waved his sword to block the attacks of the 7 assassins and roared in a low voice, Ling Sihai. Dream on. Finally, he desperately swung his sword and forced the 3 assassins to retreat. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he immediately put away the Black Dragon sword and used all his strength to activate a huge sword radiance to perform the ultimate move of the Flying Star sword technique. Crimson Dragon Flash. The 2-meter-long golden sword radiance was burning with golden flames. Like a golden dragon, it fiercely attacked the 3 assassins in black. Bang! In the deafening sound, the 2 assassins in black could not dodge in time and were immediately blown away by the Crimson Dragon Flash. The swords in their hands were thrown out and fell into the surging river. Their chests and abdomens were cut with a 2-finger-wide wound. Pieces of internal organs and a large amount of blood gushed out from the wound and sprinkled on the river bank, emitting a strong smell of blood. After the 2 fell to the ground, they rolled a few times and stopped moving. Obviously, they had stopped breathing and died on the spot. Only 5 of the 7 assassins were left. A gap was immediately torn in the encirclement. Ling Sihai and the 5 assassins were stunned for a moment. They were shocked by the dazzling and terrifying Crimson Dragon Flash. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing made a prompt decision to break through the gap and escape upstream along the river bank. He didn't care about his injuries at all, and he forcefully endured the piercing pain as he ran with all his might. In the blink of an eye, he rushed more than 10 meters away and drilled into the dense jungle. Ling Sihai and the assassins came back to their senses and immediately chased after him with angry yells. However, Ling Sihai only brought 4 assassins and continued to chase after Ji Tianqing. There was still 1 assassin in black who had to stay behind to deal with the bodies of the 2 assassins and treat his 2 seriously injured companions. Both sides began the chase again. Under the curtain of night in the jungle, they desperately ran back and forth. Ji Tianqing was drenched in sweat and panted as he ran. His physical strength was constantly depleting and his eyes became a little blurry. However, he still gritted his teeth and held on, desperately trying to escape. He ran wildly for 2 hours, crossed several mountains, and finally got rid of Ling Sihai and the others. At this time, he was already an arrow at the end of its flight. He staggered into a cave and immediately fell to the ground, gasping for breath. After a moment of rest, he quickly took out 2 healing and true yuan pills and took them. He also bandaged his wounds. He was very clear that he was only temporarily safe. Chapter 275. Although Ji Tianqing was extremely sleepy and seriously injured, he was in urgent need of medical treatment. If it was possible, he just wanted to lie down on the ground and sleep. But he had to stay awake and did not dare to delay. After simply treating his injuries, he continued to escape into the depths of the vast mountain range. Just after he left the cave, Ling Sihai and the others followed his tracks and chased after him in less than 100 breaths. The 4 black-clothed assassins checked the cave and found traces of blood that had not yet dried up. Ling Sihai immediately cursed with a ferocious face and ordered to continue the chase. The 4 assassins were all experts in pursuit and assassination. Even if Ji Tianqing left a little trace, it would not be able to escape their pursuit. The 5 people kept running in the mountain forest, getting closer and closer to Ji Tianqing. Time passed quickly, and the dark night gradually dissipated. When the sky was bright and a red glow appeared in the sky, Ling Sihai and the others once again caught up with Ji Tianqing. At this time, Ji Tianqing was running wildly in a large canyon. His clothes were completely drenched and dyed dark red by the bloodstains, making him look extremely miserable. However, his wounds were bandaged and treated, and he applied hemostatic and healing powders, so the wounds were no longer bleeding. Moreover, the medicinal pills he took had been refined, and the surging medicinal efficacy helped him recover 60% of his true essence. This canyon was located between two towering mountains. The valley was damp and dark, full of all kinds of strange flowers and grasses, as well as layers of vines and thorns. In the early morning, the canyon was filled with morning fog, and there were sparkling dew between the flowers and leaves. The colorful flowers, quietly blooming in the valley, looked very beautiful. But Ji Tianqing was not in the mood to appreciate the scenery. He passed through the shrubs and flowers as fast as the wind, making a rustling sound, and countless drops of dew. Not far behind him, about 100 meters away, Ling Sihai and the 4 black-clothed assassins were in hot pursuit, carrying swords and sabers. The 5 of them sprinted over, bringing with them a gust of wind, blowing the flowers and leaves all over the place. A quarter of an hour later, Ji Tianqing rushed into the depths of the canyon. This was already the bottom of the valley. A straight and steep mountain wall blocked his path. He had no choice but to stop and look around with a serious expression. There were cliffs to the left, right, and in front of him. The cliffs were covered with slippery moss and layers of vines. The surrounding soft ground was covered with weeds that were half the height of a person, as well as wildflowers and small trees of different colors. Behind him, Ling Sihai and the 4 assassins were rushing over as fast as lightning. Apart from retreating out of the canyon the way he came, there was no other way for him to escape. Damn it! This is a dead end. Ji Tianqing secretly gritted his teeth and cursed in a low voice, his eyes surging with a fierce light. At the same time, Ling Sihai and the 4 black-clothed assassins rushed forward and surrounded him. Everyone's bodies trembled slightly as they panted violently. They were not in a hurry to attack. Gripping their swords and sabers, they stared at Ji Tianqing and secretly adjusted their breathing. Little bastard, let's see where you can run off to this time. Ling Sihai gripped his blue sword and savagely glared at Ji Tianqing. He gnashed his teeth and shouted, "Even the heavens want to kill you. Your life is destined to end, so why haven't you surrendered yet?" Ji Tianqing was expressionless. Tightly gripping the black dragon sword, his entire body surged with killing intent. He was secretly communicating with the little black dragon with his spiritual sense and gravely asked, "Little black dragon, can you still hold on?" The black dragon sword communicated telepathically, "Old Ji, in the previous battle, I used up too much of my energy. I only have 40% left, so I can't change back to my original body and take you out of this canyon. But I can still barely hold on and fight with you one more time." Every time the black dragon sword was unsheathed, the divine dragon phantom was the most powerful and dazzling strike. To be able to unleash such a stunning strike, Ji Tianqing's strength was undoubtedly required, but it mainly consumed the little black dragon's energy. In addition, Ji Tianqing had previously used the black dragon sword to fight a bloody battle with the assassins for a long time. The little black dragon's energy was constantly being consumed and declining, and now it only had about 40% left. Hearing its answer, Ji Tianqing silently muttered in his heart, "Since that's the case, then today I can only fight with my back to the river." He made up his mind, his eyes surging with a cold light as he stared at Ling Sihai and shouted in a deep voice, "Ling Sihai, let's settle the grudges between us today." Ling Sihai revealed a sinister smile and roared with killing intent, "Only your head and blood can wash away the hatred. Go to hell. Kill." Following his order, the 4 black-clothed assassins waved their swords and charged at Ji Tianqing with murderous intent, launching a siege. Whoosh 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 whoosh. More than a dozen dazzling saber lights and sword shadows slashed toward Ji Tianqing from 4 directions, bursting forth with a fierce energy. Ling Sihai also joined the battle, waving his sword and using his supreme sword techniques, thrusting out 6 sword glows that attacked Ji Tianqing's vital points. Ji Tianqing was immediately in danger and was about to lose his life. At this critical moment, his heart was filled with an intense desire to live. Filled with unwillingness, he desperately waved his sword and used his supreme sword techniques to launch a counterattack. Sword glows and sword glows fiercely collided in the air, producing the crisp sounds of metal clashing. Clang clang clang. Ji Tianqing was shaken back on the spot, his body trembling and bleeding. The black dragon sword in his hand almost flew out of his hand. The little black dragon's aura became even weaker, and the power of its sword intent was also constantly weakening. Ji Tianqing swung his sword and exchanged a few blows with Ling Sihai and the others, but then he was struck in the back, blood gushing out of his wounds. The black dragon sword was extremely weak and could no longer fight. However, Ling Sihai and the others became braver and fiercer as they fought, launching fierce attacks with murderous intent. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing could only put away the black dragon sword and use the flying star sword technique. He fully activated the power of the sword embryo, directing 3 golden sword glows to attack the 4 black-clothed assassins. Thousand Feather Blade. The 3 sword glows immediately split into 9, stabbing at the vital points of the 4 assassins from various tricky angles. Whoosh 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 whoosh. In just 5 breaths, the 9 sword glows stabbed nearly 1,000 times at a speed faster than the speed of light. The area within a 10-meter radius was filled with golden sword glows, becoming dazzling and filled with sword chi. Such exquisite sword techniques immediately changed the expressions of the 4 assassins as they waved their swords to block in horror. However, they could not block at all. Their vital points were hit by the sword glows one after another, and blood was constantly spurting out. After 5 breaths, the sky full of sword glows and the 9 sword glows dissipated. The 4 black-clothed assassins were covered in wounds and bloody holes. They had been pierced into sieves. 3 of them fell to the ground on the spot, their bodies badly mangled and their auras cut off. The last one did not fall, but he was also seriously injured and on the verge of death. Blood was constantly foaming out of his mouth and nose, and his body was on the verge of collapse. Chapter 276. Ling Sihai's body trembled, and his face was ghastly pale. When he left Flame Spirit City, he was full of confidence and thought that he would definitely succeed. Even if Ji Tianqing's speed of growth was shocking, he would definitely be able to kill him with 9 mystic comprehending realm experts. However, when he fought with Ji Tianqing, he realized how terrifying Ji Tianqing's potential was. The 9 experienced assassins were all at least at LV5 of the mystic comprehending realm. However, these assassins were either killed or injured by Ji Tianqing, and they had all lost their ability to fight. Now, he was the only one left to face Ji Tianqing alone. When he saw Ji Tianqing's murderous look, he suddenly felt a chill down his spine, and a trace of regret flashed through his heart. He did not regret coming to the Star Ancient Realm to seek revenge on Ji Tianqing. He only regretted that he had underestimated Ji Tianqing and did not recruit more powerful assassins. Ji Tianqing looked at him coldly and slowly stepped forward. He said in a low voice, "Ling Sihai, it's your turn. Now that things have come to this, we can only fight to the death. Don't even think about running away. You should know that you can't escape." Ling Sihai was at LV4 of the Mystic Comprehending Realm and was very close to LV5. Ji Tianqing, on the other hand, had successfully refined another acupoint in the battle earlier. At this moment, he had refined all 8 acupuncture points in the 3rd sword vein and had naturally advanced to LV4 of the Mystic Comprehending Realm. The outcome of this bloody fight was already decided. When Ling Sihai saw Ji Tianqing approaching, he immediately retreated with an ugly expression. He held the green sword tightly with both hands and shouted fiercely, "Ji Tianqing! Stop it! I have something to say. I believe you. Yunfei was not killed by you. There must be a misunderstanding. Stop it for now. When I go back and investigate, I will definitely clear your name. There was no doubt that Ling Sihai was scared. He actually agreed with Ji Tianqing's words and begged for mercy in disguise. Ji Tianqing suddenly sneered and said jokingly, Ling Sihai, you finally believe that Ling Yunfei was not killed by me? I do. Of course, I believe you. Ling Sihai suppressed his anger and humiliation and nodded repeatedly. Ji Tianqing sneered, hee, I'll tell you the truth. It was actually Ji Ling who personally killed Ling Yunfei and framed me. Ling Sihai was stunned for a moment, apparently unable to believe this fact. However, in order to survive, he nodded without hesitation and said, that's right. I had my suspicions too. Ji Tianqing, since this is a misunderstanding, please let me go. I will investigate this thoroughly. Before he could finish, Ji Tianqing interrupted him. No need. Ji Tianqing coldly said, from the moment you chased after me, you were destined to die. Since you already know the truth, then die in peace. As soon as his voice fell, he did not give Ling Sihai a chance to speak. He immediately activated two sword chi and used the second move of the Flying Star Sword technique. Wind Thunder Strike. Two huge golden sword chi slashed towards Ling Sihai from the left and right. The dazzling sword chi and the violent wind mixed into a golden thunderbolt and instantly struck Ling Sihai. Boom! With a thunderous explosion, Ling Sihai's figure was drowned in the golden light. His green sword flew out and fell into the grass not far away. A 3-meter wide pit was created on the ground, splashing mud and grass all over the sky. The deafening sound reverberated in the canyon for a long time. Ling Sihai was badly mutilated by the wind and thunderstrike. His body fell into the big pit, and half of his body was buried by the soil that fell from the sky. Everything was over. Just as Ji Tianqing said, the grudge between him and the Ling family was completely settled. The valley was silent, and only the smell of blood quietly filled the air. Ling Sihai was dead, and 3 of the 4 assassins he brought with him were also dead. The assassin who was lucky not to die, fell to the ground covered in blood and fell into a coma. Ji Tianqing staggered over, picked up the sword on the ground, and pierced the assassin's throat. After doing all this, he had exhausted all his strength. His whole body went limp as he sat on the grass, gasping for breath silently. After an unknown period of time, his physical strength recovered a little. He took out a few pills from the space ring and took them. Time passed quietly, and the morning fog in the canyon gradually dispersed. The sun rose slowly, sprinkling a ray of golden sunlight into the valley. About 2 hours later, Ji Tianqing used his energy to suppress the injury, and his true essence also recovered a little. He simply treated the injury, and returned the way he came, leaving the deep canyon. After he was far away from the canyon, he was completely safe. At noon, he found a secluded and dry cave in the mountains and settled down for the time being. He spent 2 hours to set up a formation at the entrance of the cave. Then, he sat cross-legged in the cave and silently used his energy to heal his injury and recover his strength. This night of chasing and killing had greatly damaged his true essence, and his injuries were disastrous. He could only stay in the cave to heal his injury, and continue his journey after he recovered his strength. 2 days passed quickly. On the morning of the 3rd day, Ji Tianqing finished his treatment and opened his eyes. After 2 days of recuperation, he consumed 4 black-level upper-grade pills and finally recovered his true essence. As for his internal injury, he had recovered 60 to 70%, and it did not affect his movement for the time being. However, the sword wounds on his body had left many scars, which could not be healed in a short period of time. After dawn, Ji Tianqing left the cave and woke up Qianyu in the 100 treasures brocade pouch. After resting for 2 days, Xianyu had recovered 80% to 90% of its strength, and it carried him into the sky to continue their journey to the hidden fog mountain range. That night, Xianyu carried Ji Tianqing across thousands of mountains and rivers, and they finally arrived at the hidden fog mountain range after flying for nearly 1,000 miles. Even during the day, the hidden fog mountain range was shrouded in layers of fog, making it difficult to see anything. It was late at night, and the fog in the mountain range was thicker and more mysterious and dangerous. Ji Tianqing was not in a hurry to enter the hidden fog mountain range, and he asked Xianyu to stop at the entrance of the canyon. Xianyu, the hidden fog mountain range is very dangerous, and it's not suitable to enter at night. We'll rest in this canyon tonight, and we'll enter tomorrow morning. Xianyu did as told and landed at the entrance of the canyon. It shrunk its body to the size of a kitten, and it went back into the 100 treasures brocade pouch to rest. Ji Tianqing stood at the entrance of the canyon, and with the help of the dim starlight in the night sky, he looked around and observed his surroundings. The canyon he was in was one of the entrances to the hidden fog mountain range, and the canyon was shrouded in thick fog that had not dissipated for many years. Chapter 277. The canyon was dark and quiet. There was not even a gust of wind. Occasionally, a ray of starlight would shine into the canyon through the gaps in the fog. Ji Tianqing sat on a black rock, holding the black ancient book and reading it carefully. Before this, he had already flipped through the contents of the ancient book many times. He stared at the last few pages of the book. There was still a corner of the torn page, and he could vaguely see a line of small words. Full Moon Lake. The aura of a divine item has appeared there. It was just a few words, but they contained important information. When he saw this line of words, he decided to investigate and came to the hidden fog mountain range alone. According to this line of words in the ancient book, he could conclude that the so-called divine item's aura should be referring to the heavenly star bead. The aura of the heavenly star bead had appeared in the full moon lake before. After he obtained the map of the hidden fog mountain range, he had carefully checked the routes and locations marked on the map. In the depths of the hidden fog mountain range, there was indeed a place called the Full Moon Lake. From the canyon where he was now to the Full Moon Lake, he had to pass through more than half of the hidden fog mountain range and at least 7 to 8 dangerous regions. After a long time, Ji Tianqing closed the book. His eyes were filled with anticipation as he muttered softly, "I hope I can successfully find the whereabouts of the heavenly star bead. My risk was not in vain." He solemnly put away the black ancient book, closed his eyes, and began to cultivate. The silent and long night finally passed. After dawn, Ji Tianqing ended his cultivation. After packing up, he walked into the canyon. The canyon in the morning was shrouded in a thick fog, and the valley was filled with the fragrance of flowers and dew. Ji Tianqing stepped through the knee-high grass, splashing countless drops of dew as he walked firmly into the depths of the canyon. The ground in the canyon was soft and damp, and it was covered with colorful flowers and shrubs. There were also many fruits of various sizes. Ji Tianqing had learned the 1,000 medicine collection before, so he could identify thousands of common medicinal herbs. With just a glance, he could recognize that most of the flowers and shrubs were medicinal herbs. Although most of the medicinal herbs were relatively common, they were not too rare. If he gathered all the medicinal herbs in the canyon, he could exchange them for at least 2 or 3 spirit stones. However, he was full of thoughts about finding the heavenly star bead. How could he have the time and leisure to gather medicinal herbs? About 15 minutes later, Ji Tianqing arrived at the end of the canyon. What appeared in front of him was a deep and narrow gravel path. The path was a gap between 2 mountain peaks. It was only about 3 meters wide, and there were straight and steep rock walls on both sides. If one stood on the path and looked up, they would only be able to see a sliver of the sky. Therefore, this path was called the sliver of sky. Gravel would often fall from the walls on both sides, piling up in the middle of the path, forming undulating piles of rocks. Ji Tianqing stood outside the entrance of the one-line sky and stared at the small path for a moment before stepping in. Of the heavenly star bead, of the heavenly star bead, of the canyon, of the canyon. Of the heavenly star, of the canyon, of the heavens, of the Li. He saw the colorful flowers as big as a wash basin. He thought they were ordinary flowers and did not pay much attention to them. However, when he walked past the huge flowers, they seemed to come alive. They stretched their necks and stuck to him. The huge flowers that were half opened suddenly opened and turned into a huge mouth as big as a wash basin. They stuck to his body. The huge mouth was filled with sharp spikes that looked like rows of teeth. They immediately pierced through his robes, through the extremely tattered golden sun's soft armor, and into his flesh. Ji Tianqing's body shook. He felt pain and numbness all over his body. His face turned pale. Damn it! It's the man-eating flower. He reacted instantly. The huge plants with thick roots and gorgeous flowers were the legendary man-eating flower. It was a monster that was between an animal and a plant. It was usually motionless and disguised as an ordinary flower. It would emit spiritual chi waves and fragrance to attract prey. Once the prey got close to it, the man-eating flower would open its bloody mouth and tightly wrap around the prey. It would use its sharp thorns to penetrate the prey's defense and use its sticky venom to numb and corrode the prey. Not to mention a human, even a monster with a strong body would find it hard to escape if it was entangled by the man-eating flower. In the end, it would be swallowed and not even its bones would be left. It would become the man-eating flower's nourishment. Ji Tianqing realized that something was wrong and struggled with all his might. However, his legs and waist were wrapped by the man-eating flower. Even if he used all his strength, he could not break free. Luckily, he could still move his hands. He immediately took out the black dragon sword from his spatial ring and slashed at the man-eating flower. Swish, swish, swish. The dark green stems of the man-eating flower were as thick as his arm. They were instantly cut off by the sharp black dragon sword. Dark green venom spilled out and sprinkled on the grass. Zzz, white smoke immediately rose from the ground. A large patch of wild grass was corroded into black ash. If this venom were to be poured on a human body, what would happen? Ji Tianqing watched in horror. He quickly jumped back to avoid being stained by the venom. Although the stems of the man-eating flower were cut off, its vitality was abnormally strong. The basin-sized flower was still wrapped around Ji Tianqing's legs and waist. The thorns were still drilling into his flesh and injecting the venom. He quickly tore off a few man-eating flowers and used the black dragon sword to cut them into pieces. He then threw them into the bushes at the side. He was finally out of danger. He could not help but heave a sigh of relief. Looking down at his legs and waist, he realized that there were large holes in his clothes where the man-eating flower had bitten. The wounds were filled with small pinholes. A large patch of his skin had turned dark purple. It was obvious that he had been poisoned. Luckily, he had already bought the antidote powder in Flame Spirit City. He quickly applied it to his wounds. Soon, it was effective. The numbness and pain all over his body disappeared. I was too careless this time. I was attacked by the man-eating flower before I even entered the hidden fog mountain range. What a bad start. Luckily, I reacted in time. If the poison had been worse, I would have been paralyzed and turned into fertilizer for the man-eating flower. After treating his wounds, Ji Tianqing muttered to himself, full of self-blame. He held the black dragon sword tightly and carefully stepped into the one-line sky. He advanced cautiously. After what happened just now, he finally realized how dangerous the hidden fog mountain range was. In this mountain range where there were few people, he could encounter danger at any time. Not only were living creatures, poisonous snakes, and insects fatal, but even the inconspicuous flowers and shrubs could be life-threatening. Chapter 278. It took Ji Tianqing an hour to cross the layers of rocks, but he only crossed the 1.5-mile-long one-line sky. When he walked out of the one-line sky, he suddenly felt that the world had become wider. He had truly entered the hidden fog mountain range. He stood on a withered patch of grass and looked around with his sharp eyes to observe his surroundings. There was a thick fog above his head that covered the rising sun, causing the surroundings to be slightly dark. He saw a withered and decaying forest not far ahead. The trees in the forest were sparse, and most of them were dark brown. The treetops were bare, and not a single green leaf could be seen. At a glance, the bare black trees were like tall wooden stakes that stood on the desolate ground. Some of the trees were twisted and crooked, and the treetops were split in all directions. It looked gloomy and was filled with the aura of death and decay. The ground was covered with withered yellow leaves, and the thick layer was like a quilt. The leaves at the bottom layer were already rotten and emitted an unpleasant smell. The forest was dead silent, and there was not even a trace of wind. The leaves on the ground did not move at all. The sky was gloomy and dark, causing the air to be filled with the aura of death and desolation, causing one's heart to feel heavy. Ji Tianqing stared at the strange withered forest and frowned as he muttered to himself. The forest after crossing the one-line sky is marked on the map as the Forest of Death. Other than that, there's no other information. He did not understand why this withered and dead forest was called the Forest of Death. However, he guessed that since this area was marked on the map, it must be a dangerous place. Unfortunately, this Forest of Death was a place that he had to pass to get to the Full Moon Lake. There was no way he could avoid it. If he avoided this Forest of Death, not only would he have to take a long detour, but he would also have to break into other dangerous places. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing gripped the black dragon sword tightly and walked into the forest. Rustle, 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 his feet stepped on the withered yellow leaves on the ground, which made a soft sound. The surroundings were strangely quiet, and he could clearly hear his own footsteps and heartbeat. When he walked into the forest, he could clearly feel that the air was very oppressive. It was filled with a thick sense of decay and coldness. His face was solemn as he stepped forward. His right hand gripped the hilt of the black dragon sword tightly. His mind was tense, and his heart was filled with vigilance and vigilance. Although there was nothing in the withered forest other than dead trees and fallen leaves, there was nothing else. However, he felt a chill run down his spine, as if a pair of invisible eyes were watching him in the dark. That strange intuition made him uneasy, and he had to be on guard. When he had taken several hundred steps and entered the depths of the forest, a pile of fallen leaves at the edge of the forest suddenly moved twice. The withered and yellowed leaves silently parted to the sides. A grayish-white skeletal hand with 5 curled finger bones crawled out of the soft, fertile soil. This skeletal hand was dark gray in color. It was unknown how long it had been buried underground. There were a few cracks and gaps on the 5 slender finger bones, which were stained with dark red mud. The skeletal hand gently pushed aside the withered leaves on the ground and slowly extended outwards. Immediately after, a second skeletal hand emerged from the soil and pushed aside the fallen leaves on the ground. The 2 skeletal hands gently moved the soil and tried their best to extend outwards, bringing out a grayish-white arm from the soil bit by bit. Not long after, the soil between the 2 palms surged faster, pushing the withered leaves to the sides. A grayish-white skull gradually emerged from the soil, shaking left and right as it struggled. This was a human skull. There was a fist-sized hole in the top of the skull, and a few cracks extended outwards from the hole. Its eyes were deeply sunken, and 2 balls of light blue flames were embedded in the 2 holes, just like its eyes. Its chin had disappeared, and only half of its mouth was left. Its teeth were also incomplete, and it looked very ferocious and terrifying. This skeleton used its palms to support itself on the ground and twisted its body left and right. Soon, it emerged from the soil. A hole was left in the soil, and it was immediately covered by the fallen leaves. The grayish-white skeleton looked into the depths of the forest and seemed to be able to see Ji Tianqing's figure. The blue flames in its eyes kept flickering. It staggered its skeletal feet, stepped over the fallen leaves on the ground, and chased into the depths of the forest. At the same time, the fallen leaves on the ground all around began to surge and separate to the sides. Countless grayish-white skeletal hands emerged from the soil and pushed aside the fallen leaves on the ground. Before long, complete or incomplete skeletons crawled out of the ground one after another. In the eye sockets of each skeleton, there were 2 balls of light blue flames that flickered with an evil light. Some skeletons were tall and burly, some were incomplete, missing arms or legs, some held rotten swords in their hands, and a few skeletons only had half of their bodies left. However, all the skeletons looked into the depths of the forest and silently opened their mouths, revealing their white teeth as if they were sneering silently. Ji Tianqing was still holding the black dragon sword tightly. His footsteps were heavy as he advanced in the forest, and his eyes were sharp as he observed his surroundings. The scenery around him had not changed. It was still covered with bare dark brown withered trees, and the ground was covered with a thick layer of dead leaves. However, he was already in the depths of the forest. The light was even darker, and the air was filled with wisps of gray fog. He could only see 100 meters away. Everything further away was covered by the fog. Not long after, he saw a ball of light blue light floating in the gray fog 100 meters away. The light seemed to be light as it floated quietly in the fog, looking particularly mysterious and strange. Ji Tianqing frowned. He slowed down and continued to move forward. When he approached the ball of light blue light, he realized that it was a flame the size of a fingernail. When he walked in front of the light blue flame, the air flowed invisibly, causing the light blue flame to accelerate and rise into the sky. He raised his head and looked into the distance. He saw many light blue flames in the hazy gray fog, densely packed like fireflies on a summer night. "This is phosphorescence?" Ji Tianqing murmured in a low voice, and a hint of seriousness flashed in his eyes. He knew very well that phosphorescence was what the common people called ghost fire. It only appeared in places where corpses were gathered. There were countless balls of light blue phosphorescence floating in the depths of the forest. Did it mean that there were countless corpses buried under the forest? Thinking of this, he could not help but purse his lips and shout in his heart, "I'm not even afraid of living people. Why should I be afraid of a pile of corpses?" You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.